Good evening. This is the Council's first public hearing in which we will review the County Executive's proposed general plan, HOCO by Design. Sign up to testify on the general plan that is the subject of this public hearing was done online and was available in person prior to the start of this session. The cutoff for testimony for sign up was at 7 p.m. this evening. The proceeding this evening is a hybrid meeting, which will be held in person and via WebEx teleconference. It is also available to the public via video stream online at the County Council website and broadcast on channels 44 and 99. At this time, I'll do a roll call of the members. Ms. Walsh?
I'm here.
Dr. Jones?
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening. Vice Chair Young?
Here.
And Mr. Youngman should be joining us shortly. Before we begin this evening's proceedings, we will recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I have to tell you how much nicer that sounds with a full room of our community rather than just the five of us usually. This evening, the council will hear testimony on the following general plan content. General Plan Introduction, Chapter 1, Growth Conservation, Chapter 2, and Future Land Use Map, FLUME, Character Areas, Appendix B, Fiscal Impact Analysis, Ecological Health, Chapter 3, Environmental Appendix A, County in Motion, Chapter 4, Economic Prosperity, Chapter 5, Dynamic Neighborhoods, Chapter 6, and Route 1 Corridor. Next Wednesday, June 21st at 9:30 a.m., the Council will hold our fourth work session on the General Plan, which will include a discussion on Chapter 3, Ecological Health, Appendix A, Environmental, and the Fiscal Impact Analysis. The Council will hold additional General Plan public hearings and work sessions over the next several months. A complete calendar of our council meetings regarding the general plan can be found on the council's website. Please check regularly for updates of the various general plan sessions taking place in June, July, and September. If there are any students who will be testifying this evening, for those in person, please come up to the front row so that way we can call you to testify. And those virtually, please contact Isaiah Anderson by raising your virtual hand on the WebEx or sending him an email at Anderson, IANDERSON, at howardcountymd.gov. We allow students to testify first so that they may get home at a reasonable time. Oh, in order to prepare for school tomorrow, but you know what? There's no school tomorrow. Today was the last day. Please note that while we are receiving testimony in person and via WebEx this evening as usual, we continue to receive written comments, which will be fully considered by the council prior to taking action. Anyone who signed up to testify at this hearing as an individual or on behalf of an organization will be called up to testify. When you are called upon to testify, if testifying in person, we ask that you come to the podium and turn on the microphone to begin your testimony. If you are testifying virtually, you'll be unmuted by our meeting moderator. In both cases, please state your name and the city or town of your home address. If you signed up to testify and are providing testimony on behalf of a nonprofit organization or a government board, commission, or task force, you must have already provided written documentation of your authorization to testify on behalf of that group to the council administrator. Only one representative may speak on behalf of an organization. Others interested may testify as individuals. Organizational representatives, please identify the organization, board, commission, or task force on behalf of which you are testifying. Nonprofit organizations will have up to 5 minutes to speak. Individuals and other organizations have up to 3 minutes. Individuals who have indicated that they are testifying through an interpreter may be allowed a total of 5 minutes with interpreter translation. You may not yield your time to another speaker. You'll be notified at the 30-second mark to begin wrapping up by the administrator, and then you'll be notified when your time to speak is up. You must conclude when your time is up. If you have written testimony, you may also email it to councilmail@howardcountymd.gov. And just, I guess, two small notes. One, this is ultimately a community plan, and we're really a community coming together to decide how we want to grow, where we want to grow, what we want to preserve, and what we want to conserve. And so ultimately, we are a room of neighbors, and it is my deepest request that we treat each other as neighbors, as the neighbors that we are, and that we really come together in a positive spirit to deliver this general plan. And secondly, if you are feeling enthused by someone's comments, given the large numbers here, it might help the proceeding go faster if you give some spirit fingers. I'm not going to clamp down on clapping, but if it interrupts the proceeding, that's when it kind of becomes an issue. And if I'm calling the next person and they can't hear, that's another issue. So just setting the table for this evening. And again, I'm so glad that everyone in our community who is here to plan together. So we will begin with a brief 5-minute presentation from the Department of Planning and Zoning. Welcome, Ms. Kendall.
All right, good evening, members of the council. I'm Mary Kendall, Deputy Director with the Department of Planning and Zoning. And tonight, on behalf of the department, I am seeking council support for Council Bill 28-2023, which proposes the adoption of HOCO by Design, the county's new general plan, which carries forward the existing Downtown Columbia Plan, the Ellicott City Watershed Master Plan, and also includes a new plan for the Route 1 corridor. The general plan is a high-level policy document that guides county decisions related to development, land preservation, transportation, infrastructure, housing, environment, and various other key land use issues over a 20-year period. We update the general plan once a decade, and we engage the community in a comprehensive community planning process. And through our robust and unprecedented community engagement strategy, staff have hosted nearly 100 community meetings, received roughly 12,000 comments, and incorporated a diversity, equity, and inclusion lens by collaborating with community-based organizations to reach populations traditionally underrepresented in planning processes. So this plan combines the many diverse voices of our community into a shared vision, one that is achievable and will result in more equitable, sustainable, and predictable outcomes for our county. And the HOCO by Design project team, we're all grateful to the community members and the council members who participated in the planning process. And much of what we heard through the process is that Howard County is a wonderful place with parks and trails, farmland, historic places, diverse and inclusive communities, employers large and small, and first-class schools. And this plan does not propose to change what makes Howard County a wonderful place to live, work, or visit. It builds on its assets, meets unmet needs, and helps us to anticipate and adapt to challenges and opportunities that will arise in the next 20 years. And the county is at an inflection point, and it's fortunate to have strong demand for residential, industrial, and commercial growth, but it has limited undeveloped and unpreserved land remaining to build in a way that we have built in the past. And this plan recommends that we accommodate most of our demand in places referred to as activity centers, which are strategic locations in the county that offer opportunities for mixed-use redevelopment near existing residential areas. And these centers advance a vision for walkable communities with access to gathering spaces, amenities, services, and transit. This plan also proposes a more equitable future for all by increasing the supply of for sale and rental housing choices that are affordable to residents across a range of incomes, and overall helps create a healthy jobs housing balance for our workforce. It offers incentives for affordable housing options for our low and moderate income households, our older adults, those with varying abilities, and our homeless population. It promotes more diverse housing choices, such as duplexes, triplexes, and accessory dwelling units, countywide, while ensuring that we preserve our community character and we respect our community character through design guidelines and form-based or character-based codes. The policies in this plan are more achievable. They provide realistic, clear direction for the plan's implementation, and they offer guidance for our future functional and master plans, such as Bike Howard and Walk Howard, and also our Water Sewer Master Plan. It gives guidance to the Adequate Public Facilities Ordinance Committee that will be convened 1 year after plan adoption as required by code. It will give guidance to our future updates to our zoning and land development regulations and will help inform future capital budgets. Our plan is sustainable. It has strong preservation policies that offer guidance for how we can continue to protect our environmental, historic, and agricultural resources, and it builds on the county's impressive land preservation record with 39% of our land already permanently preserved for agricultural and environmental purposes. This plan reduces environmental impacts by encouraging walkable and compact mixed-use redevelopment in activity centers. And through redevelopment, we have an opportunity to incorporate stormwater management practices, plan for green space, and build activity centers at different scales with varying design. The plan's vision also recognizes the importance of fiscal responsibility and sustainability in that new growth generates a net positive fiscal benefit that helps pay for the cost of our future maintenance and infrastructure needs, including roads, schools, parks, community centers, and other amenities. And in closing, this plan provides an opportunity to grow in a manner that improves upon the county's unique and diverse community character, to respect and prioritize our natural environment, and to support our infrastructure needs while meeting our demands for growth. Addressing these needs in a responsible and equitable manner will help the county remain a diverse and inclusive place for our residents, children, and businesses. The county is committed to working with the council to make this plan and our shared vision a reality. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kendall, and thank you also for all of your efforts. I hope you see some spirit fingers behind you because you've been working very hard the past 3 years. I have that Neil Goturi and Jake Burdett are signed up as students. Are there additional students online, Mr. Anderson? Okay, we'll start with Mr. Goturi and then go to Mr. Burdett.
Okay, good. There's a green light, right? All right, cool. So, hello everyone. My name is Neil Goturi. I'm a sophomore at River Hill High School living in District 5, and I'm here to talk to you about Chapter 3 on the environment, specifically the adaptive measures section and the microgrid bullet. And so, for some context, let me pull up my specific thing I wrote up. Microgrids are local electric grids with defined boundaries that are capable of acting alone or with the broader grid. Now, that's a pretty vague definition because microgrids take the form of a lot of things. We see them on military bases, hospitals with generators, a home with solar panels, etc. I mean, they're just any electrical unit that can either work on its own or work independent, or work with the greater, macro grid in general. Now, currently, it says in the plan for Howard County to just include on-site power generation. Now, in the current landscape, we see microgrids built all the time with diesel generators. For example, most hospitals have backup diesel generators to maintain power when there's an issue. And that makes them microgrids, but it does not make them renewable. And so if Howard County wants to champion renewables and increase its renewable output, I think there's something to be said about including a specific line that says renewable microgrids in the plan. And that's just because, microgrids with renewables allow us to work independent of the grid in what's called decentralized or distributed energy production. Now, the second thing I want to add is a recommendation to add a line encouraging the development of microgrids in residential areas. Two reasons, very similar to the broader renewable one, is number one, it increases the presence of renewables in Howard County, and number two, it adds resiliency to residential areas. And the idea is with climate change, we're going to have stronger storms and more natural disasters, so power is going to be getting cut out more and more just because the lines are being knocked out. So we want power to stay on the residential areas more and more, especially as people are staying home for work. Now, we can look to California to see some possible issues with the renewable energy transition if not planned from the start. So California is a state with one of the lowest costs to produce electricity, but it is one of the highest utility bills. And that discrepancy in cost comes from the transmission. They've just been sort of adding microgrids and renewables to the system without properly planning for it from the start. And that's created that huge discrepancy where people are just paying absurd amounts for transmission. And I think that the lesson we can learn from that is that, if we're not planning for these microgrids to come on from the start of development, then that just opens up more issues later on that are going to eventually end up plaguing the customer who's going to have to pay for it. And I don't have a degree, I don't have a license in this sort of stuff. I just take the independent research program in HCPSS, so I've just been studying this for the last year or so. And that's sort of my qualification to say all this sort of stuff. But yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Goturi. All right, next we have Jake Burdett. Okay. Welcome back.
Mr. Burdette, you can go ahead and unmute yourself now.
Okay, hello. Can you see and hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Jake Burdette, and I'm testifying tonight as the co-chair of Our Revolution, Howard County, specifically on Chapter 6 of the General Plan, titled Dynamic Neighborhoods, Maintaining and Supporting Vibrant Living. HOCO by Design defines dynamic neighborhoods as, quote, places that provide an exceptional quality of life, attainable and diverse housing options, and opportunities for all to thrive through access and connection to neighborhood amenities such as community centers, parks, schools, and jobs. However, while the general plan may pay lip service to those other crucial community needs aside from just housing also being essential components of dynamic neighborhoods, it is clear that those other needs like schools, which are the main thing that brings people to Howard County in the first place, are not taking priority when it comes to evaluating what produces dynamic neighborhoods, as evidenced by their exclusion from this chapter altogether and the recommendation that Apfo regulations ensuring quality public facilities and sustainable growth clawed back. If anything, current Apfo regulations are far too weak and need to be strengthened to solve our school overcrowding and other infrastructure-related crises, all of which absolutely go into making up dynamic neighborhoods. The Dynamic Neighborhoods chapter makes note of the community desire to make housing more affordable in Howard County. However, the county seems to be approaching affordable housing in completely the wrong manner. First off, the county is relying on the false assumption that higher density housing necessarily means it will be more affordable. In reality, when not accompanied by any other measures that mandate affordability, this is often not the case, and higher density just means developers can now build for high-priced units than before. Take, for example, the new Longgate Overlook townhomes, which are selling in the $600,000 to $700,000 ranges, which is significantly more expensive than many single-family homes, including the one that I live in. Again, the idea that higher density automatically equates to more affordability is a misleading myth put out by the developer lobby to justify zoning deregulation that will increase their profits. Another misleading myth that the general plan currently is relying on to try to make housing more affordable is that diversification of housing options will necessarily equate to more affordability. Similar to the example used earlier about townhouses and Longgate Overlook, the same principle can apply for other housing types too, such as condos, which can likewise sometimes be priced more expensive than single-family homes are. Chapter 6 of the general plan consistently harps on the need to add more missing middle housing to the county, but the general plan is also sure to clarify that, quote, missing middle is referring to the size of the housing, not the price of the housing. But again, higher density or smaller housing or increased supply does not necessarily equate to more affordable housing, as there is nothing stopping developers from still charging high rates for the smaller or denser housing units. If the county is truly serious about wanting to increase affordable housing, it should eliminate the fee in lieu option, which allows developers to evade affordable housing requirements by paying a small fee that is a tiny fraction of the price of actually building the affordable housing units. Instead, the general plan defends this obvious loophole abused to increase developer profits at the expense of affordable housing units. Chapter 6 of the general plan makes another dangerous and untrue assumption, that rental units are necessarily more affordable to low-income people than non-rental units are. Although people of low income may have greater access to renting because it may not require a large down payment or mortgage, without proper protections for renters, the monthly price to rent can sometimes be just as much, if not more, as the price per month that non-renters may have to pay for their housing. On top of this, there's nothing stopping landlords from increasing rents by drastic amounts and doing other predatory landlord/management practices. Indeed, in some units in Howard County, people's rents are going up at least 20% in a single year. Without some form of rent control or rent stabilization, similar to the 3% annual increase cap which just passed in Prince George's County, increasing rental units will likely lead to vulnerable renters being exploited and rent gouged by unregulated and profit-driven landlords, which more and more often these days are heartless and notoriously cruel real estate management companies such as Bozzuto and Blackstone. The same issue also applies to accessory dwelling units or ADUs. Please consider this input when making final changes to HOCO by design. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we have Praveen Panuri.
Hang in there. I wasn't expecting to be here so soon. Hey, good evening. My name is Praveen Panuri, a resident of Ellicott City, and I'm here today representing the people's voice. We are here with some specific edits to the general plan, and our specific edits are to make sure that the intent of the law is maintained when we do the implementation. We do understand that the general plan is supposed to be general, and the implementation is done over time, starting with zoning changes, followed by development plans showing cohesiveness with the plan's goal. But since the general plan has set a high priority goal of increasing in residential development, especially with regard to assumptions that those efforts will provide more affordable housing units, it becomes very important to include language in the implementation suggestions to make sure that goals are met and the assumed benefits are provided. So here are a few of our recommended edits, and we did email this testimony out to you. So in Chapter 1, there's a section regarding missing middle-income housing. We completely agree that we need to have middle-income housing in the county, but this goal has been circumvented in the past by the developers by using fees in lieu provision. So we request that you edit the implementation goals to include well-defined preconditions to get the benefits for the waivers and fast passes. We recommend that words such as significant units should be more specifically and objectively defined, because what's a significant unit for you may not be a significant unit for us, for me. So we just want to make sure it's very, very objective in there. In Chapter 5 on page number 37, in Section 2, we recommend adding additional language to safeguard the buffering requirements of new high-density activity centers coming up next to existing neighborhoods, many of which are located next to old neighborhoods and shopping centers right next to the R20 zones. We recommend that the general plan be edited from where it notes implementation goals to allow sufficient density in activity centers to add, along with improved buffering and retained environmental protection. Same buffering language should also occur in Chapter 6, page 44, implementation. This edit will help ensure that high-density development does not override all other land use responsibilities, especially the environment. Chapter 6 on page number 49, again, we recommend that the affordable overlay should be defined at a minimum of what we mean by significant portion of units. Is it 10%, 5%, 2%? Let's just be specific. Again, the whole objective is to make sure that while implementing, we are maintaining the intent of the law. In Chapter 6, page 51, implementing actions, in Section 4D, here is an example where the general plan provides specific exemptions Apfo with regards to the school requirements without requiring a minimum amount of affordable housing to get this benefit. We believe that the general plan's assumption that providing specific exemptions will help in reaching affordable unit goals without any suggested requirement on the amount of provisions by a project. It's a recipe for not meeting this goal at all, and it has been taken advantage of by the developers. Please do not assume anything and clearly articulate the county's expectations for providing the benefits to the high-density developers. The general plan continues to misinterpret the Howard County Public School System's feasibility study regarding sourcing of new students from developments versus resales. In Chapter 10, data is presented as to how low a percentage of new students come from new homes. It is clearly and honestly noted that new homes are be defined as new occupancy permits in the last year. So if you had occupancy permit 2 years ago, that's not defined as a new home. And we all know that even after 2 years, there will be students coming in from that homes.
30 seconds.
Okay, so I'll skip because I'm running out of time. But I do want to end on a compliment because you will be hearing a lot of people who will be not as complimentary. Chapter 10, page 54, explicitly states the general plan's goal of a one-on-one replacement of affordable units in redevelopment. We would like to see such specific language in sections mentioned above too. So thank you. Pending any questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well,
Ms. Young?
Mr. Benori, could you repeat what you just said, right at the very end? About replacement of homes one for one? What was,
Yep, so let me just
what was
bring
the
it-
thought there?
So in chapter 10, page 54, the general plan explicitly states that the general plan's goal is to have a one-on-one replacement of affordable units in redevelopment. And we like that statement because it's very, very specific, and we are requesting that the rest of the general plan be as specific as this.
So one-on-one replacement.
Of affordable units in redevelopment. So if there's a redevelopment going on, we got to make sure that whatever affordable units we had prior to the redevelopment are being maintained.
Oh, that's assuming that something is torn down.
Yes, absolutely.
That already exists.
Yep.
And that already has affordable units in it.
That's correct.
Okay. I was going to say that.
Yeah, I mean,
okay.
that's a specific language, and that was just an
Right.
example. So.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Fran Lopresti, who will be followed by Dana Soar, then Kelly Kleinfelter.
Good evening, council members. I am Fran Lopresti from Columbia, Maryland, a concerned citizen and volunteer member in both the age-friendly and HOCO by Design efforts. As you consider the new master plan, I want to stress a few of the many points raised in the housing section of the age-friendly Howard County Action Plan. The ultimate goal is to provide more housing and more affordable housing for the fastest growing segment of our population, and that is seniors. While many of us have lived well and are prosperous, a growing number of seniors cannot afford any new houses being built for them, and some feel stuck in a big house they no longer need or can afford to maintain. Single, divorced, and widowed seniors, perhaps with expensive medical conditions and without healthy incomes, need help right now and increasingly will need more in order to stay in the county. At the same time, apartments for limited income seniors are not being built anymore, apparently due in part to changes in state tax credit formulas and lack of incentives for developers. We need more options. How about a home sharing program with screening services? More and easier ways to create accessory dwelling units. Zoning changes to permit more varieties of smaller single-story compatible housing in single-family neighborhoods, and incentives to get developers to build age-restricted housing closer to amenities like food stores, pharmacies, and banks. We found that the different zoning rules that apply to Columbia compared to other areas of the county can sometimes throw up roadblocks. An example is group home resident limits. We found that legal covenants are not age-friendly, be they HOA or any of the others. We need to make it easier to modify existing homes by removing bureaucratic obstacles. We also found that there is no hard and fast requirement for moderate income housing units in most of Columbia. When any village or activity centers are developed with new apartments, some of these should be for housing for lower income people, including seniors, as part of those plans. Instead, we see senior apartments built where it's convenient for developers rather than for residents. Expand and better promote our wonderful Office of Aging to help older people stay in their homes, and revise and update the 2006 Universal Design Guidelines.
30 seconds.
Chapter 6 of HOCO by Design specifically references the age-friendly action plan. Those pages are attached to the testimony. It might be best to create an older adult housing plan that updates the last effort from 2004. Not every senior wants to live in a 55-plus community, a large 50-plus, townhome with an elevator. We need choices. I'd be happy to talk to you or any of your staff if you have other questions or want to discuss it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Lopresti. All right. Next, we have Dana Soar, who will be followed by Kelly Kleinfelter, who will be followed by Tina Horn. I'm sorry, Mr. Soar, I'm not sure your mic is on.
How's that?
Way better.
Got
Thank
it?
you.
Thank you. I'm Dana Soar, 8914 Stonebrook Lane, Columbia, District 3, testifying tonight as a steering committee member of the Housing Affordability Coalition. Tonight, I'll summarize briefly the positions that the coalition submitted earlier today by letter to the council. That letter includes the names of over 400 community members who agree with our positions. I also want to recognize all the housing advocates here tonight who are worried about our housing situation. It's an understatement to say that our housing market is failing to serve our community needs. It's more accurate to say that it's punishing people every day. Nearly half of our renter families are hurting. 13,000 renter families now pay unaffordable rents, 30% of their gross income or more. Nearly 7,000 of these families pay more than 50% of gross income to rent. These statistics get worse every year as our housing costs keep rising faster than wages. Seniors are hurting too. They'll make up 20% of our population in just a few years. That's 70,000 people. For senior renters, average rents now exceed many pensions. And many senior homeowners who need to downsize discover that they can't do that here affordably. People with disabilities, including nearly half of those seniors, are more vulnerable because we have a near total lack of affordable homes that are ADA compliant. And young adults are hurting as well. Many are leaving the county because they can't afford the housing. So we're losing precious young talent to other communities when we should be enjoying the benefits here of our investments in our school system and the community college over so many years. I want to live in a community where Neil Goturi still lives. I don't want him in Anne Arundel County or Hartford County. I hope you stay here, Neil, and can afford to do that. So the people I'm describing live here today. I'm not describing an amorphous group of people from elsewhere who are ready to pounce in and buy up all these affordable homes that we're going to build. We have to acknowledge that 1 out of every 4 Howard County households has total household income below $75,000, 1 in 4 homes. And there aren't many affordable homes for that level of income. Housing is the biggest expense in most people's budgets, so when it costs too much, everything else gets squeezed. And it's county policies that are creating that squeeze because they're limiting the growth of housing far below the pace of job growth. The policies have created scarcity, which has generated competition, which has escalated prices and rents. It's pretty basic. Who wins the competition? It's the people who are already advantaged. They've got assets, they've got higher incomes, they can thrive despite higher prices. Who loses? It's the people who are already marginalized. We might not have designed our housing policies to systemically punish our most vulnerable residents, but that's the result, and we have to acknowledge it and we have to fix it. HOCO by Design, as you heard from Ms. Kendall, states that we've reached a critical inflection point. We have a huge undersupply of homes for the workforce today, 20,000 homes. It's projected that we'll need 31,000 more for the job growth over the next 15 years. And the report stresses that we have to keep investing in our community to make sure that it remains a good place for residents and businesses to locate. The fiscal study of HOCO by Design, also the review of the spending, or by the Spending Affordability Committee, both agreed that investments in housing would more than pay for themselves, including the addition of required school capacity. Housing growth pays its own way and then some. Unfortunately, the housing allocations proposed in the plan are too low. The rationalization is that because of development obstacles, have not been able to produce the full allocation of homes over the last few years, why set a higher goal for the next 10 years? That rationalization misses the whole point of a plan, which is to set some goals for our community that meet our community needs. We know that we need more housing. We don't need a continuation of policy-dictated scarcity. So a lower allocation for housing just doesn't make sense to us. The Planning Board, by the way, made the same point in March when they recommended a higher allocation. So the coalition is asking the council to amend the plan in several key areas. First, an annual housing allocation of 2,500 homes. 25% of these homes should be affordable for families earning less than 60% of area median. 10% of the affordable homes should be suitable for people with disabilities. Second, we'd like to see recommendations and performance targets from the Housing Opportunity Master Plan included in HOCO by Design. We'd like to see more equity and deconcentration of lower-income households across a broader range of the county. There are concepts in the focus areas appendix for Newtown and other opportunities for affordable housing that really need to be picked up and carried forward. It's long overdue. And last, we strongly agree that collaborative work is needed to identify school sites and alternative school designs to meet the needs of student population. We can do that if we work together. Thank you. Thank you for your service.
Thank you so much. Next, we have Kelly Kleinfelter, followed by Tina Horn, followed by Jennifer Silpietro, followed by Tracy Broccolino.
Good evening, Chair Rigby. Good evening, Chair Rigby, Vice Chair Young, and members Dr. Jones, Ms. Walsh, and Mr. Youngman. My name is Kelly Kleinfelter, and I'm the president of Howard Progressive Project and a resident of Columbia in District 4. At HPP, our central organizing principle is community. We envision a more just Howard County, a place where every person can grow, thrive, and reach their fullest potential. There's an ugly myth in Howard County that when we build an affordable housing unit, someone somewhere in the world with no connection to our community hears about this affordable unit and decides to move their family to Howard County to burden our schools and our roads and our social services. I use the word ugly intentionally because this myth is deeply rooted in an othering of people, in an assumption that we don't have an obligation to people who struggle to find housing. And I use the word myth intentionally because in my experience as a teacher, that's what it is. It's a myth. Because so many people who live and work in Howard County, our students, our teachers, our paras, our kitchen staff, our frontline workers, our custodians, they struggle with housing here in Howard County, and they are members of our community. I'd like to share a few stories with you tonight to dispel this ugly myth. I taught a young woman this year who was homeless. She moved at least 4 times during the school year. She didn't have a reliable access to Wi-Fi in all of these moves, so she had a hard time completing her schoolwork. She lost her laptop and then her charger in different moves. Her mental health, her learning, and her grades suffered. She suffered. Hers is one story. As of May 5th, we have 548 HCPSS children who are homeless. That's 1 in 100 of our HCPSS children who are homeless. That number is equivalent to the entire population of my son's middle school. I taught a young man this year who worked nights at a factory to help pay his family's rent. Because while his mother works days and his older brother works nights and goes to community college during the day, that's still not enough to support them and the 2 younger children in the family who are in elementary and middle school. My student's a true scholar. When I asked a question, his hand was always the first in the air. His insights into literature and into humanity, his analysis and his writing were the top in our class, but his 17-year-old face was just perpetually etched with exhaustion. The family is a family of frontline workers. Every one of them, all 3 of them worked through the pandemic. But they pay more than 50% of their combined income to live in Howard County, where they work and where they send their children to school. My student, an essential worker, and his family are working hard to achieve their American dream, and yet the rent must eat first, as they say. And for my student, school came second. Additionally, the adults who serve our students are struggling with housing. More than half of our HCPSS employees earn less than 60% of Howard County's median income, which means their incomes qualify them for a moderate income unit. Our shortage of teachers and paraeducators and other frontline workers in Howard County, as small business owners will tell you, and our workforce housing shortage are related public policy failures. This ugly myth that affordable housing benefits outsiders is a tale we tell ourselves to absolve us of responsibility to the least fortunate in our community, when in reality, the price of our absolution is a burden on the backs of students and working families and essential workers. It's time we dispel this myth and expand our workforce housing. Doing so will benefit all of us who already live here right in Howard County, those in need of housing, our businesses who need workers, and those who want to live in a vibrant and growing community. Let's be a community that grows in a smart and inclusive way, growing our tax base to support the schools and the services we all value so very much while building the housing infrastructure that our community needs. As such, HPP asks that the County Council amend and approve HOCO by Design with the following housing allocations. At least 2,000 units a year are built. 25% of each of these units, or a minimum of 500 homes, should be affordable to households earning below the 60% median income. And of the affordable homes, at least 10% should go to support residents with disabilities. I want to thank all of you for your service to our community, and thank you for hearing my testimony tonight.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kleinfelter.
Thank you.
Next, we have Jennifer Solpietro, followed by Tracy Broccolino, followed by Katie Collins-Erkey.
Good evening, council members. My name is Jennifer Solpietro, and I'm on the board of directors of the Howard Progressive Project and a member of the Howard County Housing Affordability Coalition. I'm a resident of Harper's Choice Village in Columbia in District 4. Some of you on the dais probably cringed when you saw my name, given that I've aimed plenty of criticism your way in recent years. But I'm hoping that you'll hear me out, because I'm here testifying in person for the first time ever to show you that I'm here in good faith to ask you to do more for affordable housing. Last month, I was at a doctor's office at Howard County General Hospital. As I waited to be seen, I overheard the nurses and technicians chatting together. One woman asked another how her house hunting was going, and she said, "We finally found one in Mount Airy. We couldn't afford to buy anything here." I wondered to myself how many other people in Howard County face similar struggles when it comes to housing affordability. The United States Department of Housing and Urban Development defines affordable housing as costing no more than 30% of a household's gross income. Gross income. In Howard County, more than 13,000 households pay more than 30% of their gross income on rent. 6,800 of them pay 50% or more. The waiting period for a housing choice voucher, if you managed to get on the wait list before it closed in 2012, is a decade. A decade. Meanwhile, the vacancy rate for subsidized units in Howard County is currently and perpetually 0. I'd like to ask you to imagine for a second what that's like. Imagine having to live by the mantra, the rent eats first, forgoing not just non-essentials, but also basic essentials just to afford rent. Imagine living with the constant stress of knowing that falling behind on the rent is the first step into the quicksand of eviction and homelessness. Forget about getting a subsidized unit. There aren't nearly enough of them. And forget about the dream of homeownership. You can't afford to buy a home here, and you can't afford to save money for one either. All you can do is work as many hours as you can and make difficult budgetary choices to ensure you keep a roof over your family's head. As of this writing, there are 548 students in the Howard County Public School System, enough to fill an average middle school, who are currently living the nightmare of homelessness. Scores more live in households where they are one car breakdown, one medical catastrophe, or one lost job away from meeting that same fate. Many of these HCPSS students have jobs, not for earning spending money or to save for college, but to help their families pay the rent every month. Imagine what it's like to be them. Council members, these people and families who struggle like this are your constituents. They are our neighbors. They are our children's classmates and friends. They deserve to have their basic human need for shelter to be treated as a priority by their government so they can achieve the American dream. As Matthew Desmond said in his book, Evicted, without housing, everything else falls apart. Thank you.
Thank you. Tracy Broccolino will be followed by Katie Collins-Erkey, Derek Miller, then Krista Threefoot.
Good evening. Can you guys hear me? Good. All right. Good evening, council members. I'm Tracy Broccolino. I live in Mount Airy, Maryland, and I'm glad to see you again after visiting ACS this morning. Thank you for coming to that. It is an honor to have the opportunity to testify regarding the needed changes to the HOCO by Design plan, identified by the Housing Affordability Coalition and supported by our own planning board. Our team is here in support of these needs and addresses these needs every day. Go Team CAC. They're back there with their hands. For nearly 60 years, CAC has worked creatively to diminish poverty and enable self-sufficiency for all Howard County individuals, families, and children in need so they can grow and thrive in this community. Most of our clients are employed and educated, challenging the myth that families who struggle just need to work harder. They do work hard. I am here to ask you to support the Zoning Board and the Housing Affordability Coalition's recommended changes to Chapter 6 of the plan, specifically raising the housing allocation to at least 2,000 new homes annually for the next 10 years, ensuring a minimum of 500 of these homes are affordable to those earning 60% or below the area median income, and at least 10% of those homes being set aside for our neighbors with exceptionalities. For just a moment this evening, I want to take you on a quick journey with two of our neighbors. Mr. Richmond needed housing assistance for the first time ever this very month. He grosses $4,600 monthly, works full-time, and lives alone in his King's Contrivance apartment that he rents for $1,945 a month. He missed work for 3 months because he was in a motor vehicle accident, and his employer would not allow him to return on light duty. He fell behind on his rent. He is engaged with our moderate income housing unit program and is now caught up. It took one event for Mr. Richmond to fall behind. This could happen actually to any of us. Or consider Miss Davis. She grosses $4,600 a month and rents an apartment for her and her daughter at $1,895 a month. She needed to change to a first floor apartment, which raised her rent $500. Depleting all of her savings, she reached out for assistance. We provided her with $2,500 in assistance, and she is working with Making Change to learn how to better make her ends meet. Ms. Davis faces a persistent struggle to maintain her housing. In FY22, CAC distributed $5 million to keep 800 families in their homes. Fiscal year to date, we've spent over $2.5 million to keep families from eviction. Though COVID emergency funds are gone, the need for assistance persists. This morning, we had 100 families, over 100 families in queue asking for assistance, and most of them will be denied because they are not sustainable, because the rent that they pay is more than their gross income can take. Unaffordable housing creates multiple problems for our neighbors. Just last Wednesday, CAC's Howard County Food Bank had 122 visitors in one day. We broke all of our records, and we know it's because families are paying their rent instead of eating. The difference between what housing assistance grants allow and what a family needs to be self-sufficient in this county is staggering. According to the University of Washington self-sufficiency standard, a family of 4 needs to earn $118,000 annually to be self-sufficient and receive no assistance in this county, while the federal poverty rate dictates $30,000 for that very same family. This $88,000 gap represents why more affordable housing for all must be prioritized in the HOCO by Design plan. This is a great opportunity to use public funds to support self-sufficiency. CAC is doing its part to not only keep families housed, but also support families in their homes with weatherization to address families, the home's energy efficiency and rehab needs, freeing up funds for rent in the short term, helping the environment and appraisal values in the long term. While we can't build our way to affordability, the current deficit of these units exacerbates a growing inequality. Please support the coalition recommended changes by raising the HOCO by Design number of units, ensuring 25% of those new homes are affordable, and 10% of those support our neighbors with disabilities. The Council's support in revision of Chapter 6 directly mitigates systemic and social economic inequalities. Thank you for your service to our community. We're grateful for you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Katie Collins Erkey, followed by Derek Miller, followed by Krista Threefoot, followed by Peter Engel.
Good evening. I'm so excited to be able to start my day and end my day with the County Council, so thank you for that opportunity. I'm Katie Collins Erkey. I'm the Executive Director of the ARC of Howard County. I've been there no more than a year, so I'm still getting grounded, but this was really important that I come out and talk to you about challenges of affordable housing. We have two very real challenges, not only as an organization who serves people with disabilities, but an organization who employs direct support professionals. Most of the people that we employ do not live in Howard County. We have to outsource them from the other jurisdictions that surround Howard County, and because of that, we have to pay an exceptionally higher rate of pay to get them to commute out to Howard County. We currently have a workforce shortage. We have about 55 vacancies of our 300 300 positions. So the need for workforce housing is very real. Sorry, it's been a long time since I've done public speaking. Just having a little nervous moment here. The other part that we are concerned about is we need to increase the units that are affordable and accessible. I know when we try to find people units in my previous role, we could find a unit that might have fit the price point, but it wasn't accessible, or we could find a unit that was accessible and didn't fit the price point. So that's really important. So I think the coalition did a great job outlining all of the facts and figures, so I won't stay here for my entire 5 minutes, but please support the coalition's recommended changes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Collins Erkey. And I think we're all rebuilding our speaking and social stamina over the last few years. Next, we have Derek Miller.
There we go. Good evening.
Yes,
All
thank
right.
you.
It was already on. There we go. My name is the Reverend Derek Miller. I live at 3695 Rogers Avenue, just down the road from you. I'm here as a community resident, but also I serve as the pastor and priest at St. Peter's Episcopal Church. I'm here speaking as a resident, but also as a person who serves alongside others in our community, addressing specifically the housing recommendations found in Chapter 6, Dynamic Neighborhoods. I'll confess, I'm no housing expert, but the founder of the faith I hold was an itinerant preacher and healer who himself experienced homelessness, including not having a place for him to be born, if you remember the story. So you could say housing scarcity has been integral to the Christian faith from the beginning. So I have a stake in it today. I want to tell you that our current housing crisis is the thread woven through most of the ministries and stories that I hear every day. When people spend well over the national average of their income on housing, they cannot afford food, so they come to our pantry. I get dozens of calls every week from people asking for rental assistance, for help with their eviction notices, for help with their utility bills and shut-off notices. We help provide food for children in our schools who need additional food over the weekends just to stay fed. Senior residents who are on fixed income are asking for more protein-rich foods as rents rise and their pension doesn't. These are Howard County residents, the same Howard County so often noted for its affluence, for its school system, for its quality of life. But I'm here to bear witness to you that we are in a housing crisis in this county, and I see the impact of it nearly every day. Also, my own family is not immune to this. I'm a part of a dual income family, both of us with master's degrees and other postgraduate education, one child, and I'm here to tell you that I can't afford to live in this community that I serve. And I want to live here. I'm only able to live here because my church provides housing for me as a clergy person. We're someone that we don't have a lot of debt, we don't have many mouths to feed, but even if we could find a home available for purchase, we could not afford to buy it. This doesn't happen on its own. As you know, general plan zoning laws, they're not morally neutral things. So I'm calling on you as the City Council to say that you have the power and responsibility to amend and approve this plan with the recommendations that have already been offered from the Alliance. and to craft and approve housing policy that also takes seriously not just our housing crisis, but also environmental concerns. I want to make sure you understand and hear me as a church that has served in the floods. Environmental concerns and housing crisis are not mutually exclusive. It's a false choice. We can do both. We must do both. I want to see the same standards and passion that work to preserve life in the community from floods to also promote the ability for people to actually live in this community. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Reverend Miller. Thank you. Krista Threefoot, followed by Peter Engel, followed by Jennifer Broderick.
Krista, you've been elevated. You can go ahead and unmute your mic and turn on your camera if you wish.
Alrighty. Thank you. Hi, I'm Krista Threefoot, and I'm here representing the League of Women Voters of Howard County. I'd like to thank the County Council for the opportunity to participate in the public discussion of HOCO by Design and the impact it will have on Howard County now and in the future. The League of Women Voters of Howard County has been involved in advocacy related to land development and housing for a number of decades, and we've been following the evolution of this new general plan closely. As an organization that values research and consensus, we're pleased with the work the county has done to study the issues from all sides and to involve a diverse array of stakeholders in developing the HOCO by Design plan. We also support the intentional focus on equity within each branch of the plan. The League is well aware of the immense growth Howard County has experienced and will continue to experience over the next decade and more, and how this growth makes it imperative for us to increase the number of housing units, whether we want to or not. We're also aware of how current housing shortages and the resulting increases to housing costs have created an affordability crisis that impacts everyone in the county, including those who protect, serve, and teach in our communities. As many of you on the council know, based on our past advocacy, affordable housing is an issue of great importance to the League. We believe that citizens deserve an adequate housing choice in a suitable living environment within the economic reach of persons of all ages and abilities. We support HOCO by Design's plan to address low-income housing as well as the missing middle through the diversification of new housing construction, especially the focus on multifamily units, smaller units that enable home ownership for low to moderate income individuals and families, mixed-use buildings, and changes to zoning codes that allow the use of ADUs. However, as members of the Affordable Housing Coalition, we believe that in light of the severity of the affordability crisis in Howard County, this plan does not go far enough in its requirements for affordable housing units in new housing construction. Specifically, we believe that the plan should be amended to state that at least 2,000 new homes should be built each year, of which 25% or a minimum of 500 homes should be affordable to households earning below 60% of the median income. Of these affordable homes, we agree that at least 10% should support residents with disabilities. Transportation is both a key issue for us as a growing county and a subsidiary issue related to affordable housing. It's not enough for someone to be able to own a home or pay reasonable rent. They also need to be able to reliably access workplaces and commerce centers from their homes. And as population and construction increase, the county will need infrastructure that accommodates more people traveling through more crowded spaces. So the League supports HOCO by Design's investments in increasing and improving public transportation, especially the new downtown Columbia and East County transit centers, new park and ride lots, and county-supported improvements to MARC stations and lines, as well as building new walking and biking pathways to connect housing and commercial areas. Protecting and preserving our beautiful county is also of great importance to the League, and we support HOCO by Design's ecological health implementation actions as outlined in the plan. Finally, the League is invested in promoting equity in education, which includes ensuring that all students attend schools that provide adequate space, well-maintained facilities, and a healthy environment. We support HOCO by Design's plan to address both population growth and extensive deferred maintenance by supporting renovations to Oakland Mills Middle School, Dunlogan Middle School, and Oakland Mills High School, and by increasing space at Hammond High School. So in summary, the League is highly supportive of HOCO by Design, with the only caveat being that we believe it includes insufficient requirements for affordable housing in new development. We urge the county to pass this plan with an amendment that requires 25% of 2,000 or at least 500 new homes built each year to be affordable to households earning below 60% of the median income. Thanks so much for your time and consideration of our testimony.
Thank you very much. We have Peter Engel, followed by Jennifer Broderick, and then Kevin Chin.
Good evening. I'm Peter Engel, the Executive Director of the Howard County Housing Commission. I'll try not to talk too fast. The Commission is dedicated to ensuring that the county's low and moderate income population have an affordable and safe place to live. HOCO by Design got many things right. It provides an excellent review of the county as it is today and descriptions of its needs. It discusses many good ideas for improvements. It incorporates the housing master plan that the county executive commissioned and moved to fruition. And I want to thank Mary Kendall and everyone else who worked so hard to bring HOCO by Design to you tonight. Unfortunately, as an advocate for the county's low and moderate income residents, I'm obligated to tell you that the plan does not do much for the county's housing needs. The county is missing about 7,000 homes that are affordable to people earning less than 60% of the area median income today, which for a family of four is almost $70,000. These are people that are here now. The plan does virtually nothing to acknowledge their existence and their need. We think of homes and housing as a private sector function, not a public good. But given our need for low and moderate income jobs, given our desire to reduce transportation that clogs our roads and pollutes our air, and given that these 7,000 households are our neighbors today, housing is also a public necessity and part of the county's infrastructure, no different from roads and schools. And we are not asking that the county produce or own the housing, we just need the county to allow it to be built. We also cannot control the laws of supply and demand. By intentionally limiting the supply of housing, we are driving up the cost to buy or rent a home. More supply doesn't guarantee lower costs, as you've already heard, but shortage certainly does guarantee higher costs. We can't solve this on the demand side. We can't remove people who live here or tell others not to try to live here, so we need to address the supply side. While we decry landlords raising rents, they do so because they can, since the competition is so limited. The best approach to solve this problem is through more supply and better plans to ensure affordability in that supply. We need to increase the number of units that can be built each year and dramatically expand areas where denser townhomes and multifamily homes can be built. Currently, the amount of land available for starter homes, apartments, and condos is shockingly small, and excluding Columbia with its new town zoning that, with council approval acting as the zoning board, could allow such housing, that area is reduced much further. Then layer in Apfo, and it's surprising that we can create any new homes for our 7,000 families at all. This is a structure set up to limit supply, and it works, since we haven't been able to create the units that are in such demand and that are theoretically allowed under our existing land use plan. And HOCO by Design actually decreases the number of units that can be built, even though it is almost universally acknowledged that the country, the state, and the county do not have enough housing for the people who are already here and for the demand that is part of the area as a whole. We understand that people don't want change, dislike the greater density, and are concerned about roads and schools. But change is coming regardless. If we continue to not develop, prices and rents will continue to skyrocket, and the communities we love will change dramatically. I, for one, do not want to see Howard County looking like Chevy Chase, with the huge houses completely filling lots, only the very wealthy being able to afford to move in, and crammed roads every morning and evening. So what can be done? Approve the planning board's recommendation to increase the allowed housing units annually by 500 and plan for them to be affordable. Change the future land use map that is in HOCO by design so that more areas are available for starter homes, condos, and apartments. These areas need to be more widely spread around the county. Columbia Village Centers and Gateway, which won't even be planned for years to come, are not nearly enough. Change the zoning in parts of the county that are outside the public service area so that in the future they could support denser housing. A zoning change would not require the county to provide water and sewer service. Instead, it would just allow for changes in the future. Without that action now, this plan will be locked in for 10 more years. Thank you very much for offering this opportunity to testify and for your work to address the needs of all county residents. And of course, I would be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Ms. Young?
Thank you, Mr. Engel. Yes, you too welcomed us this morning at 9 a.m. and are here to be with us again. I think it's, 8 p.m. I'm not sure at this point. You mentioned that you think that it would be a good idea to place housing outside, affordable housing outside of Columbia. Where are you thinking that affordable housing could go outside of Columbia?
Well, the entire, everything east of the public service area line could be built that way. It just depends on what the planning department and the council then determines are appropriate areas for denser housing. Other areas have, I'm sorry, let me just.
So are you just looking on 108 then, or?
No, the entire rest of the public service area. And I'm also suggesting that we change the zoning, entire east of the public service area line. And then I'm also suggesting west of the public service area line, we allow for denser housing. We could allow, as other jurisdictions have done, multifamily housing in any single family zone. So other jurisdictions have allowed 4 units or 6 units or even up to 8 units on any single family lot. That would be an option for the council to consider.
Would that be outside of, I ask you specifically outside of Columbia?
That could be in any single family zone, which is outside of Columbia.
Okay, so that would be outside of Columbia then?
It would be in Columbia and outside of Columbia.
Have you looked at, are you thinking about Route 40? Are you thinking about other areas in Ellicott City? Are you thinking about Laurel? I'm just wondering how far afield you've gone in your thinking.
I would think of all of that in the whole county.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Engel.
Thank you, and also thank you for your dedication in being there at 9 a.m. and then being here tonight.
Thank you. Ms. Broderick will be followed by Kevin Chin, will be followed by Angie Boycher.
All right. Hello, all again. I also was there with you all this morning, so glad to start our day and end our day together. I am Jen Broderick, Executive Director of Bridges to Housing Stability, and I served on the Housing Affordability Task Force alongside many other nonprofit leaders and housing experts in this county. Our report clearly showed that there is a severe lack of housing opportunities for many populations in our community, and it has gotten worse since then. Bridges to Housing Stability has been a nonprofit focused on preventing and ending homelessness in our county for over 30 years. And we continue to look for affordable housing solutions for all of our clients that we serve, which is over 1,000 a year. Housing prices have been soaring in Howard County for the past several years. 27% of households in Howard County are renters, and at least half of them are rent burdened. The number has probably increased since the last time that the rental survey was done, as even Class C, which is more naturally occurring affordable housing rental units, went up dramatically during the pandemic, greatly outpacing inflation rates, even in these modest income increases of minimum wage workers. It just doesn't keep up. Fixed income renters also are feeling a great pinch, and seniors, and as well as those with disabilities.
One of our primary activities at Bridges is to help rehouse households with limited incomes and those experiencing homelessness. Prior to the pandemic, we rehoused our households in a majority of our households in less than 45 days. Now it is taking 2 to 4 times longer. There just isn't availability for housing. This is due primarily to the lack of affordable units in this for this population. Vacancies just don't exist in most of these places that our clients can afford. And you know, I mean, it's 1.5% across all the county, but we know there's just not availability for low-income workers and households. The longer individuals remain homeless, the more likely they are to lose their employment. Children have trouble in school. It impacts their safety. Their mental and physical health are affected more profoundly as well. And it isn't just low-income people that are impacted. As you've also heard earlier tonight, it's young professionals. One of my former interns has a master's degree in social work and is married. They are a 2-income household. Yet despite this, when their lease was up for renewal and the landlord raised their rent $450 a month, they couldn't afford this. And they were planning to save for a house, but they knew that if they stayed in their unit, it would deplete their savings. They are now in the process of moving back in with their parents in Ellicott City, which I'm sure their parents are thrilled about. Because they can't find anything with the same rent that they can afford. So, but they want to stay in Howard County. The case managers that work for Bridges have what would be considered livable wages at 50 to 60% of Howard County area median income each year. But for a single individual, they can't afford to live in this county with what they are paid. So most of my workers all also live outside of the county, as you've heard from other nonprofits tonight. They're professionals with bachelor's degrees and master's degrees. And I know that the HOCO by design is not a perfect plan. That, you know, there are things that could be improved. No plan is perfect. And you know, I know that there will be changes that will be made, but I really hope, you know, as we look forward, the creators really were, as they were looking at it, they made sure that they were listening to some of our clients along the way, that they were listening to the people in this county, thousands of people that gave their feedback on what they needed, and housing was one of the biggest things that they heard. So I hope you will be open to the many possibilities that that are in this plan with the missing middle, creating more affordable housing. We also want to see home ownership. It's an important part of our process. Many of our clients, that's a goal of theirs, to have home ownership, but there has to be options that they can afford. So please support the Planning Board and the Housing Affordability Coalition's recommendations for 2,000 new units, with 500 being affordable. This won't solve the problem. As Peter Engel said right before me, it isn't enough, but it starts us in the right direction. Thank you for your time and attention tonight.
Thank you so much, Ms. Broderick. And if you get a chance, would you be able to send some of the timeline data to me in my office? Just sort of intakes, how long it's taking to rapidly rehouse.
Yes,
family.
not so rapid right now, but
No.
yes, I will send it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Kevin Chin. Be followed by Angie Boyder, followed by Julie Hotep.
So, hello, my name is Kevin Chin. I'm a resident of Howard County and Ellicott City. I'm here as a resident in support of more affordable housing and more diverse housing of all types in our great county. We are in a housing crisis in Maryland and in Howard County, something that our county's older homeowners may not experience, but those in my generation do as they look to build families. We have the lowest housing units to job ratio in the entire DC-Baltimore region at 0.69 units per job. Nearby Carroll's County is 1.13. What this translates to is an estimated undersupply of 20,000 housing units just in Howard County. That undersupply is reflected by the astronomical rise in housing costs for new home buyers, whereby the median home now goes for well north of $570,000 in the county. One of the best things we can do to make housing more affordable for all income levels is to increase the supply of housing. I'm going to repeat this possibly controversial statement that every liberal, conservative, and centrist economist agrees on. Building more housing makes housing more affordable. Restricting the supply of housing increases the cost of housing. That is why I'm testifying in support as an individual and a member of the Howard County Housing Affordability Coalition in support of HOCO by Design's housing unit goal to be at least 2,000 housing units per year, with 500 of those units be reserved affordable. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Boiter, followed by Julie Hotep, followed by Regina Lee.
Good evening. I am Angie Boiter from Ellicott City.
I'm sorry, Ms. Boiter, is the light lit up on your microphone?
It's green.
Okay, then it's just me.
It's okay. Sorry, I'm not usually accused of not being loud enough.
It's okay. I think my daughter thinks I have a hearing problem, so it's probably somewhere in between.
My community of Dunlogan is an established neighborhood, has been there since the mid-50s, and it has a character, and that character is what made us buy homes there. Good land use protects the character of established neighborhoods. Detached ADUs could lead to significant changes in the character of our neighborhood. We love our plants and our local wildlife, but older neighborhoods like ours do not have dedicated open space. Our backyards are our open space, and ADUs could significantly reduce the open space we all enjoy, even when it's in our neighbor's yard. The decrease in green space is especially significant in our neighborhood with our poor drainage and inadequate stormwater management. ADUs will significantly increase impermeable surfaces and increase runoff problems and flooding. A number of my neighbors have already experienced stormwater damage to their homes in excess of $50,000. Often this happens after the county has allowed a single oversized lot to be subdivided or a neighbor to build a significant addition to their home. The county does not require new construction to take steps to prevent or address issues it creates. ADUs are also bound to increase traffic and parking on the neighborhood streets that were not designed to accommodate it. It is ironic that ADUs are often called age-friendly because older adults could house caregivers or rent the ADU to get extra income, or younger families could house their parents. We can do both of these now within our current homes. Older adults overwhelmingly desire to age in place, which means we want to stay not just in our homes, but also in the communities we chose to move to many years ago, and we do not want them to change to higher densities and less green space. It is not age-friendly to older adults to promote ADUs. Ultimately, everybody's going to sell their house. What happens if I sell a house with an ADU? Many think it'll make a house harder to sell because most people won't want a second house on the property. The property may be most likely to appeal to investors who will want to rent out both units, and this can be done with a conditional use, which is practically always given unless some unusual condition exists. Non-resident landlords simply do not maintain the property the way resident owners do. On the other hand, the seller may just ask to have the property divided and sell it to two buyers, and I would give you odds that the county would allow it.
30 seconds.
And if the original property will still be zoned for single family, I wonder if they could then add a new ADU. Some say ADUs provide more housing, but the affordable housing, the claim ignores the cost per square foot to build a new home. It won't be affordable. The board of my community association hasn't had a specific vote on ADUs, but just did a survey in 2021 that had 134 responses, of which 106 were opposed to detached ADUs, 23 in favor. Thank you. Please don't vote in favor of allowing ADUs as a matter of right.
Thank you, Ms. Boiter. Next, we have Julie Hotop, followed by Regina Lee, followed by Christine Wells.
Julie, you've been elevated. You can go ahead and unmute your mic and turn on your camera if you wish.
Great. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today on the Howard County Design. I am concerned that the introduction to this general plan focuses.
Sorry, Ms. Hotep, we're having a bit of a sound issue. I just want to pause you so we can restart your time. We might need to turn up the mic in the control room.
Okay.
So, is it also possible to turn up your microphone volume within the WebEx? It's probably located in the button that has 3 dots, but It has been a minute since I have virtually provided technical assistance.
I do not see an option.
Oh, but you're sounding louder, so I think we're good.
I will try to use my teaching voice.
Okay, perfect. I think your teaching voice and then our control room, and we're all good to go. Thank you very much.
But not my mom voice. Okay, thank you for the opportunity to speak today on the Howard County General Plan. I am concerned that the introduction to the general plan focuses so heavily on the future at the expense of failing to examine the past or the current issues with adequate public facilities. When you were campaigning, I am sure you went to lots of schools that are our polling places. Almost all of them have copious trailers, portables, learning cottages, call them what you want. Because we have failed in county planning to ensure that there are adequate schools for the development that has already happened. For example, I have been testifying this year to you and to the Board of Education about the issues at our tiny little elementary school, a school that is a majority Black, Title I, community eligible school with a high proportion of students receiving free and reduced meals. Just last week, I raised at a Board of Education meeting that if we start next year with the same number of students that we ended this year, we will start the year at 130% capacity. Yet we are the receiving elementary school for all development in Meriwether, as well as the receiving school for the development at Roslyn Rise, which opens during the next school year, and will generate even more students for our tiny little school. We heard in that same Board of Education meeting that we have adequate space because we have 110 plus seats in those very portables. Yet because our school is so small, this is about a quarter to a third of the total seats in our school. So picture an elementary school with 2 entire grades in portables. These are portables for elementary school children that have absolutely no bathrooms, meaning students need to go from the portable into the brick and mortar school to get access to the bathroom, creating huge security challenges that I think you can appreciate after what happened in Uvalde. Therefore, very few elementary school students have the maturity to be in the portables. There are concerns from parents with disabilities about having to move from portables to inside the brick and mortar school. For example, a diabetic child that may need to go to the nurse's office, or a child that may have toileting issues. As was realized at the last board meeting and recently described as causing panic in the eyes of some board members, there is not school capacity in downtown Columbia at this very moment for all the development happening in downtown Columbia. Meanwhile, I see every empty lot in the Clemens neighborhood being developed and occupied lots being redeveloped. I am disappointed that the introduction to the general plan does not address our current and past failings in providing adequate public facilities. There are no facilities in the county that I see that are as inadequate as our schools. We need a sea change with respect to improving schools. This is our history. If we do not learn from history, we are doomed to repeat it. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for working through the technical issues with us as well. Next, we have Regina Lee, followed by Christine Wells, followed by Robert Smith.
Regina, you've been elevated. You can go ahead and unmute your mic and camera if you wish.
I'm unmuting. Okay. Here it is.
Yep, we can hear you now, Miss Lee. We can't see you yet, but we can at least hear you. We'll take it.
For some reason, that's not working. Okay. My name is Regina Lee. I am a 67-year-old married Black female whose disability requires me to use a wheelchair for total mobility. My husband and I have lived in Howard County and in Columbia in particular for 8 years. I'm giving my testimony on the HOCO by Design General Plan, not as a member of any of the many organizations that I belong to, but as an individual. Under the topic of housing, I have 3 different issues. Number 1, I am in support of the diverse housing choices, such as missing middle housing and accessory dwelling units, as long as they are built with safe building materials. Number 2, the housing demand and supply imbalance needs to end homelessness here in Howard County. And number 3, addressing the housing needs as it relates to affordability and ADA compliance, not necessarily accessibility, but ADA compliance in particular, and to ensure people of all income levels and age ranges can afford to live, work, and play in this community. It shouldn't be that hard. Thank you all for allowing me to speak.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lee. Next, we have Christine Wells, followed by Robert Smith, followed by Deborah Klutz.
Good evening. My name is Christine Wells. I'm a resident of Ellicott City. I have served for the last 3 years as a member of the Planning Advisory Committee for HOCO by Design, and since 2020, I have been a Howard County Commissioner for the Central Maryland Transportation and Mobility Commission, which I'm sure you know provides oversight for the RTA. First, I would like to commend the staff of the Howard County Department of Planning and Zoning and the consultant team for their professionalism in developing HOCO by Design. Developing this plan while adapting to the changing circumstances with COVID-19 was not easy for anyone, but they did a remarkable job. The public input into the process has been the most extensive I've seen in my 30 years as a professional planner. Overall, I would like to strongly support the final draft plan as an important policy document for the county. These 11 chapters will provide sound guidance for the county as it moves through the next decades. I know from watching the council's work sessions that the draft plan has been presented in segments. However, I think it is important that the policies outlined in the plan be considered collectively rather than piecemeal. I appreciate the time that the council members are taking and will take in considering adoption of this plan. I must say, though, as a county resident and a volunteer, I found it unfortunate at the last work session that one member of the council openly disparaged the plan and noted that attending the plan work session was a waste of time. Specifically, I am pleased with the plan's promotion of missing middle housing that will provide opportunities that are absent now in the county for younger home buyers, middle-income workers, and retirees to live. The mobility services called for in HOCO by Design will reinforce the county's age-friendly action plan, the complete streets policy, and are vitally important for all residents to thrive, and especially for those who want to age in place. The types of investment in RTA that are discussed in HOCO by Design will allow residents to have access to jobs, opportunities, and services throughout the county. Finally, I would like to thank you all for giving the draft plan your full consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Wells. Thank you for your service on both entities and your testimony this evening. Next, we have Robert Smith, followed by Deborah Klutz, followed by Meg Ricks. Should be a green light. Right here.
My name is Robert Smith. I live in Allview. I've lived there for 45 years, longer than Miss Rigby's been around. I'm unique here. I'm an industrial planner. I've got graduate degrees in planning. I run the Howard County Central Maryland operation for a company called KLNB. We're the largest retail broker in this part of the world and a pretty decent-sized industrial broker. I've sold over 6 million square feet of warehouses in Howard County and developed a lot of the land here. And I'm here to say that while I greatly respect all the comments about housing affordability, I know how ugly it is. I own a rental townhouse here that I rent for half what it should rent for. because I know the people who are in that house need it, haven't raised the rent in 12 years. I sympathize, I understand, but I represent the industrial side of the fence. In the county, I was the head of the Route 1 Revitalization Committee for the last, not the previous, not the one we're in now, but the one before that. And the county council ignored almost all of our comments, rejected them outright. Never made it. They were killed by the planning director and other people. You have successfully, in the last 20 years, gotten rid of almost all the industrial ground that should have been developed. I know I worked on plans for most of it. You destroyed Port Capital. It's all townhouses and apartments. I had 800,000 square feet of flex laid out in Blue Stream. It's now apartments and townhouses. You're doing the same thing to the Dorsey Mark Station, where the office buildings are being torn down and turned into residential. 2 of them have already been bought for future conversion. They're just waiting for 4 years to do it. I handled Coca-Cola's property, which was Oxford Square, which was supposed to be 1 million square feet of flex and office, and they discovered the sneaky way to make it residential. Residential always beats industrial. The one piece that was left was the Chase property, but you took 90 acres of it for a school, and the rest of it's going to be something else where the quarry is. You're screwing it up. And what's worse is the activity zones that you're talking about mix residential and other non-residential, meaning retail uses, next to industrial. The mix doesn't work. I've worked on Laurel. I know what the problems are. End of comment. Any questions out of curiosity?
I believe Ms. Young has a question for you.
Yes, I do have some questions. I agree with you, first of all. I want you to know that. I think that we have not been good stewards of our commercial and industrial land. And it could be why I just saw an article yesterday where Howard County is last in creation of new jobs, actually, in this region over the last year. Dead last, and pretty far down the list over the last 5 years. And I do think that it is because we have taken all of the commercial and industrial land that you just mentioned and turned it into residential. So my question to you is there any hope for the future in trying to maintain commercial land and industrial land to create the tax base that we need in order to support all these units that people keep telling us that they want?
I'm not sure. I'm going beyond my time. I'm sorry.
That's okay. You're okay. It's okay. If somebody asks you a question, you're allowed to.
I think the answer is yes and no. You're not going to get major distribution, but I don't know that you want that. You've got it in Columbia Gateway, which, by the way, if you want to buy it today, is available for about $325 million just for the warehouse part. That's $2 million an acre. It's 168 acres. But it's also a literally world-known resource, and you're talking about tearing it all down someday and making it residential. That's the whole problem.
But there are other people.
But it's that kind of thing that kind of thing that's screwy. The plan on page 24 says that we need 7,800 new residential units in the industrial zone, and somebody, QCEW, whoever that may be, or whatever that may be, talks about adding 5.2 million square feet of industrial, and actually more than that, 6 million square feet of industrial flex in our current industrially zoned areas. And I clearly, if you can do that, you can float buildings in midair because the land's not there.
The land is not there.
I mean, literally,
It's not there to build that much
There's
industrial.
nothing there. So where this
Okay.
plan is coming from with the jobs, you're going to have a totally unbalanced tax system because the industrial people pay money and don't need schools.
I'm well aware
So
of this.
where you do have an opportunity and where we tried to get the world to agree to it back 20 years ago is all those little parcels where the plumbers, the electricians, God forbid your school buses. I know the world played with the school bus system here, but there's no place to park school buses. Go in Columbia, go out on the corridor access road. It looks like a parking lot on both sides of all those roads. Gerwig Lane looks like a parking lot. I was here last week because one of the owners there said, it's a terrible place to get in and out of. It's because of, there's no place to park. We're a free parking lot for people. But go to Route 1, go down to Laurel, by way of example, where the county wants to make it different than what it looks like now. And you've got a whole bunch of small parcels, Zone B, some of them are Zone M. But the problem is that the guys who own those are also own the businesses that are in them. And when you go to buy them to assemble them, because I actually at one point was asked by the owners of the park to try to assemble a bunch of that, we couldn't do it. You can't make it work. If you want to have an impact, there has to be a way to, either through rezoning, tax incentives, or something, and I could talk about that separate. I mean, that's a whole topic. You can do it, and you can provide an acceptable work-related environment there for small businesses. You're not going to get the big guys, but you don't want them. I mean, those guys are now locating further out. They're in Cecil County and Anne Arundel County on the east side and places like that. Even by the airport, there's almost nothing left. And those are what we call moderate-sized buildings now, 200,000 feet or so. You couldn't build a 200,000 square foot building in Howard County today if your life depended on it. Not if it's a one-story building. May I add a comment, just a thought? The
Sure.
gentleman before me
You're the first person who has talked about commercial and industrial space.
I may be the only one because the county has been so biased towards housing, and I understand. Believe me, I'm a planner. I got 2 graduate degrees. I understand. I've seen it. I know those people. I rent a townhouse cheap because of that. I'm stupid to do it, but I do it. I would make a comment to you. We spent a fortune buying conservation easements in the western, this is going to get me shot by somebody, but we spent a fortune, $30,000 an acre in round numbers, buying a huge chunk of the county and putting it on ice, conserving it, if you will. A lot of that money was bond money, if I remember correctly. I may be wrong about that.
You're talking about all the agricultural preservation area? Okay.
And where we there at the boundary line of the public service
Right, yes.
areas. Why can't we do the same thing? I don't like housing next to industrial per se, because as soon as the truck backs up at 10 o'clock at night, somebody calls the police and we have to measure sound at 80 decibels or hopefully less at the property line, and the property line's 50, 75, 100 feet from a warehouse, and that doesn't work, never will. But for the type of housing you're talking about, the reduced size, affordable, et cetera, there's clearly some way to sandwich that in to the redevelopment, particularly in the Dorsey, up by the Mark Station off of Deer Path Road, some of that. Let there be more density. If there are no students, I mean, there's a difference between trying to ding the developer for money to pay for new schools and create development that accommodates, look, I'm 78 years old. I'm getting there. That help people who don't like climbing up steps and who want a smaller, affordable place in the neighborhood they spent 50 years living in, whether it's in my house or someplace I'm comfortable with. There's got to be a way to pull that off. It may take special design. I've never seen the county spend, other than on $100+ million library project, which is a whole separate comment, but can't we spend the money and figure out how to get good design for the elderly, for the handicapped? I don't know how I deal with the unaffordable issue as it relates to children. Different cup of tea. I don't know how to do that, but I know you can do things with design, because I also went to University of Virginia Architecture School, and I know I know you can do things with affordable design. I've seen them in other places. We just don't have them here, and I can't tell you why. I don't know why. You guys run the show, so I don't know but I think you could do it. So, yes, I think you can have a lot of the industrial issues taken care of. Not all of them, but at least you'll have plumbers and electricians and carpenters and people who repair appliances. And by way of example, on that same line, you killed vocational education in the county. I guess the council didn't do that, so it's unfair comment. But if you're a good painter in a collision business, you can make over $100,000 a year. All these, you're talking about affordable housing. Every child doesn't have to go to Harvard. Children can learn in the European system a good trade and be proud of it. When I go to North Carolina and have to compete for jobs, in North Carolina, they train people. If you need, and they get good pay. I mean, more pay than what we're talking about. I mean, they make as much as state workers do. But we don't push that at all. Sorry.
No, I was going to ask if we can reach you at the email that you had registered with for follow-up.
That's the only one I use.
Oh, perfect. That's actually a very smart way to do
Ms. Rigby goes by my house every day. Just drop it in the mailbox.
All right. Well, thank you very much. And also, Mr. Smith, just so you know, the community college is working to develop a workforce and trades building and center, so that way we can sort of right those wrongs. And then additional funds were directed to ARL to sort of begin to make a more robust VOTEC program.
What North Carolina did, interestingly enough, they go to the industries that they want to grow. They ask them what they need, and the industries chip in.
Through apprentice programs?
They chip in the money.
Yeah.
And they chip in people who know what they're doing. I'm not a computer guy, but by way of example, they volunteer people, they pay people an incentive to help teach. The state and the counties pitch in the other half. It's a 50, I think it's a 50, 25, 25 deal, but don't hold me to that.
All right.
And it works. I've lost 2 deals down there because of that, because you can't, you know what it's like to find workers around here? It's hard.
Yeah.
Down there, they say, got a kid, wants to make $80,000 a year to start. We train them and train them enough that the industry doesn't have to start from scratch. They start with a running head start, and they get up to speed fast, and the industry, but they have a lot more land down there than we do. So these are people who would be probably in office buildings, which is still okay. I'm not, different concept. Anyway.
Well, thank you very much, and thanks for speaking up for industrial today. Next, we have Deborah Klutz, followed by Meg Ricks, followed by Karen Emery.
I have the green light, do I? Yes, I do. Okay. Good evening, council members. My name is Debbie Klutz, and I'm a 40-year resident of Howard County. I think I've testified here a few times. I started at 35, 36, now I'm at 40. I have a 25-year-old son, adult son, Matthew, with autism spectrum disorder, and I'm a long-term volunteer with the Howard County Autism Society and a member of the Society's Housing Task Force. I'm here tonight to speak in support of the general plan update put forward by HOCO by Design. First, I want to note with appreciation the concerted effort made throughout the HOCO by Design planning process to include and engage all residents and stakeholders to ensure that their voices were heard. I know many members of the disability community had an opportunity to participate in the process. In fact, one of my fellow Housing Task Force members, Cole Schnorf, who has a daughter with disabilities, was a member of the Planning Advisory Committee. A wide variety of forums and tools were used to engage input from residents. Major efforts were made to reach underserved and underrepresented populations. As a result, HOCO by Design is truly a community-informed document and a thoroughly constructed plan that puts forward an exciting and achievable vision for Howard County. I am strongly supportive of the provisions and recommendations related to housing. Howard County residents need more housing options, such as the missing middle housing, that are affordable and accessible to all income levels and ages. The concept for Patuxent Commons, the Autism Society's housing initiative, which I am proud to say that each of you has voted to support, is intentionally intergenerational. HOCO by Design also advances policies that will make it easier to develop such communities that are age-friendly and intergenerational. And it supports the preservation of affordable housing and puts forward reasonable, thoughtful goals for the development of new affordable housing, which we all acknowledge is much needed. As my other colleagues will testify, this is crucial if the essential workers for people with disabilities and older adults who provide support services are able to live in the community in which they work, and presently most do not. HOCO by Design will allow for housing expansion that is appropriately managed and allowed to proceed over the next 2 decades through the adequate public facilities ordinance process. Earlier this year, some neighbors from my Hickory Ridge neighborhood and I attended an equity open house at the Harriet Tubman Cultural Center to learn more about HOCO by Design and to offer suggestions and feedback. I was thoroughly impressed by the presentation and by the county staff who worked so diligently on it. In closing, HOCO by Design lays out a measured plan for advancing the values we share as Howard County residents through policies that are smart, balanced, and necessary. I hope you agree and will join me in supporting it. Not to say that there may be some changes that are needed in the tweaking of the process, but all in all, this is something we really need in Howard County. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Meg Ricks, followed by Karen Emery, followed by Hurry Hadgu.
All right, good evening. I'm Meg Ricks. I live in Elkridge, apparently not too far from the proposed South Elkridge Activity Center. I live on the eastern end between Route 1 and 95. And I just want to share some things that as I've been involved in this process with the general plan, learning about it and trying to help other of my neighbors to get involved as well, some thoughts that I had. I hope to see more investment in the Route 1 corridor writ large, and especially in Elkridge because that's where I live. But all of the Route 1 really hasn't been invested in as we would like to have seen, and not just having more residential. We've been sold a lot of empty promises over the years as far as having mixed uses of different developments, saying we're going to have commercial, we're going to have this and that, but also we're going to have all these houses, and then the only thing that ends up happening is more houses. I love Elkridge. I think it's an amazing place. I think it's a place that people should have a reason to come and visit. And have a reason to come, not just to hang your hat and to go to bed at night. I think a lot of our businesses really need more people there during the day to survive. We've had 2 different coffee shops that have come and gone because there's just not the support there throughout the day. I think we have a lot of natural beauty. We have this proximity to Patapsco State Park and the river. We've got, I was so glad to see they added the historic Elkridge Main Street, which I would love to become a gem. And we also have things close by that are just over the county line, like we've got the Guinness Brewery, and we're really close to UMBC, and so there's a lot going on over there, but it's on the other side of that county line. We also really need in our community a community center or something for our young people to do. It's been a real issue lately with some kids going around trying to find something to do, and it's going to end badly. It's not good for the people getting harassed. It's not good for those kids. It's going to end badly. I hope in our planning for Route 1, we find some land for the missing middle school in Jessup that is not in any plan anywhere, but is needed. And
30 seconds.
that site, UPS PDX, if that's going to become something different than what it is now, I'd like to be a high school, or just keep it what it is. No more houses added to that. We need jobs. We need safe routes for pedestrians. I'm okay with trucks, but if we are going to also have people walking around, we need to have safe routes for them, and we need to also have better public transportation so that families, and especially our families that are in our existing low-income housing in Elkridge, can get where they need to go. And I would love to see our families living in hotels and motels on Route 1 get support, not just indirectly hoping it'll trickle down. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Karen Emery, I believe is with us virtually, followed by Hurry Hodgo, followed by Francisco Ward.
Karen, you've been elevated. You can go ahead and unmute and turn on your camera if you wish.
You guys can see me.
We can.
Fantastic. Good evening, everyone. My name is Karen Emery, and I am the Secretary for the Progressive Democrats of Howard County, on whose behalf I am testifying this evening. I'm also a longtime Howard County resident. I've lived here since I was 5 years old. We moved to Columbia in 1970. One of the things that was really great about moving to Columbia when I was little was that Rouse had put a school in every single neighborhood. So there was a Thunderhill Elementary, there was a Talbot Springs Elementary, and there was a Stevens Forest Elementary. And those schools were built for everyone, whether they lived in expensive housing or low-income housing or everything in between. And I think that we've lost our way a bit. One of the most attractive things about our county has always been Howard County Public School System, and it's what brings so many people here. And I think we're doing our best to crater those schools. I'm going to repeat some of the things that Julie Hotop said earlier in her testimony. Right now, we have 5 trailers that sit behind Stevens Forest Elementary School. We have 3 trailers that sit behind Thunderhill Elementary School. These trailers that are behind Stevens Forest Elementary School do not have bathrooms. And that means that children who are in those trailers, if they need to use the restroom, they have to be given a key. When they walk out of the trailers, they need to make their way to a locked building where they put the key in, and then they can go and use the restroom that is inside the brick and mortar building. The trailers are unsafe. Wild animals make their homes underneath these trailers. Some of the favorite residents underneath the trailers are raccoons, and so a child could encounter a raccoon at any time. One of the things I want to make sure that we're doing in the Howard County General Plan is that we're addressing this. The Thunderhill Elementary School was doubled in size, I think, within the last 10 years, and so it's shocking to see 3 trailers out there. We use trailers as a way to get out of having to actually build a school for all the students. And school is a critical, public schools are critical for the well-being of all the kids. Whether they live in affordable housing or not, we owe them a good education. We owe them an opportunity. One of the things that I remember when I was receiving my education is that public education is the great equalizer. It's the thing that gives everybody a hand up. And so I would like to see in the general plan some attention given to reducing the number of trailers. And one person told me that these trailers are sometimes referred to as portables, but I think it's critical to understand it costs $80,000 to move one of them. So they seem to have become permanent fixtures, and I would like to see the general plan address how we're going to eliminate the use of trailers and actually build schools so that all of our children are inside a brick and mortar school where they can learn. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we have Hurry Hodgu, followed by Francisco Ward, followed by Brent Lovelace.
Good evening. Hurry Hadgu. I'm testifying on behalf of the Howard County Citizens Association to express grave concerns about the county's draft general plan. Plan Howard 2030 led to explosive increases in the rate of residential development. This explosive increase took place while the county's laws to mitigate increases in development, Apfo, were extremely lax. So much so that by the time Apfo was updated in 2018, most of the schools were bursting at the seams. This has led to massive declines in level of service. For schools, deferred maintenance has ballooned to unimaginable levels. The number of classroom trailers continues to increase. Children are being asked to walk longer distances while school bus routes are being cut significantly. County debt shows no signs of declining. Our roads are congested as ever, and much of our public infrastructure, police, fire, water and sewer, hospitals continue to experience increasing levels of service demands. The draft general plan continues to dig this massive hole of debt, inequity, disinvestment, developer giveaways, and declining level of service based on incredibly damaging assumptions and dogma. The 6-page fiscal impact analysis report, which concludes that, quote, new growth would generate more revenues than costs for service infrastructure. We know that this is not true. How do we know? We're living it. Residential development does not pay for itself. For years, the county has issued tens of millions of dollars in new debt to bridge the gap between revenue and expenditure while failing to maintain the level of service. How do we know level of service is declining? Ask the Department of Public Works that tracks the number of potholes it fixes every year. Ask the school system that can't keep up with the deferred maintenance and continues to purchase new classroom trailers, which are actually really death traps. It was just a few years ago that the fire tax was increased significantly. Since 2016, the county has, on average, issued $67 million in general bonds every year. And the analysis clearly indicates that this practice will continue over the future. In FY 2022, the county issued $160 million in new debt, adding to the county's total debt. Even as the analysis assumes that residential development pays for itself, the model assumes that half of the cost to fund new schools is financed by debt for the next 20 years. And 100% of the road is financed by debt for the next 20 years. The analysis clearly says that new money is being used to pay back, for costs for previous expenditure. If the county actually paid for the schools and roads, as well as other infrastructure, between now and 2040, the county debt would balloon by anywhere from $450 to $500 million. The debt would reach to $2.5 billion by 2040. Just a few days ago, the Department of Planning and Zoning published a, quote, did you know section where it doubles down on several of the development industry's misleading talking points. With respect to housing, DPZ asserts that when demand outpaces supply, houses become less affordable. Then it says that when there are enough homes at a variety of price points, more people can find a home that they can afford. Make no mistake, this is supply-side, trickle-down economics that Ronald Reagan perpetrated to provide corporate welfare being employed to by developers to extract economic benefits by advancing favorable zoning and land use decisions. DPZ also claims that an average of 3,000 new jobs per year were created over the past 10 years. to extrapolate based on that figure that 59,000 new jobs will be created by 2040. This 59,000 jobs figure is used as a basis to project that 30,000 new housing units will be needed by 2040. In making this claim, DPZ assumes that all the 3,000 new jobs per year resulted in demand for housing in this county, which is obviously not true. By the same token, only a fraction of those the 59,000 new jobs will lead to a demand in housing. We just urge you to reconsider these flawed assumptions and ensure that we protect taxpayer dollars by advancing a responsible general plan to ensure an equitable allocation of resources. Thank you.
All right. Next, we have Francisco Ward, followed by Brent Lovelace, followed by, yes. So after Francisco Ward, we will take a brief 5-minute break. Is Mr. Ward online? Oh, okay, just kidding. We're going to take a 5-minute break right now. Amenities we have available are restrooms to your left and also a variety of vending machines. We will see you in 5 minutes. All right, we are now back on the record, and we will return with Brent Lovelace.
Good evening. My name is Brent Lovelace. I represent the PTA Council of Howard County. The PTA Council of Howard County has recently voted on a unanimous position that the general plan should mandate adequate schools at the local level and system level alongside with any density increases it enables. The testimony tonight will highlight our concerns. We will follow up with amendment solutions. Chapter 6, Dynamic Neighborhoods, introduces building diverse housing types with school infrastructure to be dealt with separately in a reactionary manner. It promotes a nationwide density increasing catch-all language of missing middle housing from Opticos concepts that can create unpredictable increases in growth activity of 600% or more in established or phased-in neighborhoods. Serving on the Housing Opportunities Master Plan, I noticed the effort was revolved primarily around justifying a specific level of density increases, rather than a specific level of affordability outcomes or deconcentrations of policy, something our organization also has a position on. Likewise, expansion of by right ADU with minimum controls also creates the potential for highly erratic density increases that can create much less efficient long-term capital plans for the school system. Affordable housing overlays also encourage bypassing overcrowding protection for local schools with exemptions. Chapter 5 leads with expanding access to education with only college CTE mentioned. The chapter reinforces the Spending Affordability Committee's economic funding methodology that incorrectly assumes that all prior budgets met all prior needs based on the land development that was generated. We know otherwise from our $67 million issue that we had just on operating expenses alone, let alone $1 billion worth of capital backlogs for the schools currently. Chapter 4, transit, trail, and sidewalk access are generally favorable to children so that they can get to school and be safe. But the focus on limited resource prioritization rather than definitive timeline projects and goals to a given standard can lead toward a comparative underdelivery of a critical service needed by children. Chapter 3, environmental considerations benefit all residents as well. Yet uneven growth, coupled with overcrowding and under-mitigated school capacity demands, have the county forego the highest standards in school construction, such as net zero and geothermal uses, which you can see in recent projects just approved. Chapter 2 reinforces the narrative that all infrastructure can be provided by additional development in absolute defiance of current and past education budget shortfalls. The campus land use definition most closely matches a request for school resource mapping, yet combines educational resource uses with medical and office buildings for an unusual complex of potential outcomes. Chapter 1 shoehorns the term equity into density with unspecific goals and outcomes. Lastly, the historic mention of the past general plan skips a great opportunity to evaluate what's accomplished and what is yet to be accomplished, and to do regression tests to validate our proposed assumptions in the general plan are valid. I'd like to thank you all for letting me speak tonight. This is the last day of school. We would love to pack this with cute little kids and parents waving signs. I hope they're eating ice cream and enjoying their time off, but we do owe them for their long-term future, for their children's future, for our community's future, to look at the plan and make sure it addresses all these items. Tonight, we've been asked to review just chapters 1 through 6, and something that's near and dear to me, the Route 1 corridor. But we will be obviously coming out en masse for the following chapters that specifically deal with education as well as growth controls. However, we have noticed a lot of vague requirements within the school, and we're looking for mandated items to ensure that all our resources are applied appropriately as we enable growth. Any questions?
Ms. Young?
This is just a quick question because I know you will be coming out again in July. I think it's July when we will be covering the...
It's summer break, unfortunately, but yes.
Yeah, the school and the Apfo chapters and what we were talking about last week. But so I'm just curious, did your PTA council you mentioned, it represents all of the schools in Howard County?
So the PTA council consists of the PTA council itself and a board. It is falls under the charter of the Maryland State PTA, which is right now called Free State PTA. And we have delegates that come to our meetings that represent all schools in Howard County. And we have 2 delegates and 1 president for our meetings that are able to vote and vote on officers as well as positions. And we just had our election, so we'll be welcoming a Miss Terry Marcus as our new president soon. And depending on some follow-up actions, you may be seeing me around for a little longer in legislative activity. But yes, we represent all the schools through the delegate process.
And that's 78 schools now, or 79?
We actually have 1 missing school. My school that I went to that used to be called Whiskey Bottom Elementary, which got renamed to Laurel Woods, and that is our sole school in the entire county that does not have a PTA membership, and we hope to reintegrate them. And we'll be welcoming the new Guilford Park shortly, too.
Okay, but is that 78 then?
Yeah, I know as soon as I say this on the record, someone will pull up a chart and put you wrong.
I'll hold you to it. I know it's around that number. And all I wanted to know was, did you have a vote of that PTA council on any kind of stance on changing the adequate public facilities ordinance regarding school overcrowding?
So we do have older positions.
You don't have to go into what it was. All I want to know is if you had it.
We have a position that relates to that, in that we expect all schools in Howard County to be at 100% capacity or less. And that is facilitated by the adequate public facilities ordinance.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Lovelace, for ensuring that we focus on the needs of our families.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Linda Lampert-Leslie, followed by Chuck Koplick, followed by Danielle Winston.
Okay, I have a green light, so I should be good, right? Good evening. My name is Linda Lampert-Leslie. I live in District 4. I am a member of People Acting Together in Howard, although tonight I'm testifying on my own behalf in support of strengthening the provisions for affordable housing in the HOCO by Design plan. I've been a resident of Howard County for over 20 years. At the time we moved here, we had equity from our previous house, but from the beginning of my housing journey, lo these many years ago, I was a low-income worker trying to buy a first home in the District of Columbia. I was fortunate to be able to take advantage of a first-time home buyer loan that allowed me to afford the cheapest house in the cheapest neighborhood of DC. I got my start in homeownership because of the intentional housing policies of the District of Columbia. And that experience gave me a deep appreciation for how a government's housing policies can positively impact the lives of residents. Fast forward 30 years to a time when my children and my neighbors' children can't afford housing in the county they grew up in. And it isn't just them, it's the teachers in the schools they went to, the first responders and healthcare workers we depend upon, and the folks cooking and serving in our favorite restaurants. Lack of affordable housing is at the root of so many of our local issues. Our schools are dealing with the fallout from hundreds of homeless children. Cost-burdened families struggle to provide for their kids and to maintain their housing. And solving our housing problems would help address so many issues. Looking forward, without visionary planning by the county, we risk making living in Howard County an unachievable goal for many of the workers we need to keep our local economy going. As was recognized in the Housing Opportunities Master Plan in 2021, the lack of affordable, attainable, or appropriate housing options impacts everyone in Howard County. Just take a look at the SWOT analysis in the HOCO by Design plan. Housing represents the preponderance of weaknesses, threats, and opportunities, and none of the strengths. We all know housing is an issue, so what are we going to do about it? Understanding that housing is at the root of so many local issues, I recently completed the Plan Howard Academy to learn more about our planning and zoning process. And for folks listening or watching, I would highly recommend this free course, which you can register for right now online. More than anything, this course underscored to me how critical the HOCO by Design plan is, the consequences of your work in the coming weeks, and the vision you demonstrate in that work will set the direction for us. I challenge you to push the boundaries to envision the possibilities for our community. When considering housing, I know you'll hear a lot of pushbacks from folks about school capacity, but this does not need to be an either-or decision. We can have housing while addressing our school challenges, and frankly, I don't see how we get out of our current school challenges without continuing to build our local economy, and that requires housing. So I encourage you to consider the Howard County Housing Affordability Coalition's recommendations, and they're a great starting point. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Chuck Koplick, followed by Danielle Winston, followed by Dan Hajdo.
Chair Rigby, Vice Chair Young, members of the Howard County Council, my name is Chuck Koplick. I'm on the board of PATH, People Acting Together in Howard, and I'm testifying as their representative tonight. You probably already know this. PATH is a multiracial, multi-faith, nonpartisan residents organization rooted in local congregations and organizations, and our dues-paying member institutions, Catholic, Presbyterian, other denominations, Jewish and Muslim, include over 20,000 Howard County residents, and I'm a member of the Jewish Community Relations Council of Howard County. So tonight, I'm speaking about the challenges and opportunities presented in the new general plan, HOCO by Design, chapters 1 through 6, but specifically focusing on one area of interest, which is affordable housing. PATH members are very concerned about the current lack of affordable housing units in Howard County. Housing units that we've heard from many others could support firefighters, seniors, teachers, those with disabilities, and others who could not otherwise afford to live in Howard County. And in PATH's meetings with members of our community, because we do that a lot, we have a lot of conversations in our community with each other about the issues that we care about. We hear stories of teachers who can't afford to live in the county where they work, of seniors who cannot afford to live in the county where their children and grandchildren live. So just speaking personally in my Jewish faith tradition, the availability of affordable housing is deeply ingrained in our tradition. So I'll give you one famous teaching. Abraham is judged to be greater than Job because while the latter, Job, opened his doors to passers-by Abraham got busy and built housing along the roads and stocked them with food and drink so that whoever entered ate, drank, and blessed heaven. So that's my Jewish teaching vignette. The need for affordable housing has been critical for our residents, but is so often delayed or deferred. And PATH supports the call by the Housing Affordability Coalition to incorporate the housing targets and associated recommendations from the Housing Opportunities Master Plan. And we support HAC's recommendation to expand the housing supply by 2,000 new homes per year, with 500 affordable units annually for households making less than 60% of area median income. Achieving these ends will be hard, but there are a variety of opportunities, including allowance for density bonuses at activity centers in exchange for providing additional moderate housing units. We recognize the immense challenges ahead. And what we can best speak to are the stories we hear from members of our faith communities speaking of the need for affordable housing and the promise of greater equity in housing opportunities. Members speak about the need for more styles of housing to address what's been called the missing middle, providing duplex, triplex, quadplex, or accessory dwelling units that allow homeowners to live the way they want to live. Homeowners should have the freedom of choice within certain limitations, and that hidden density ADUs can be built as a right of ownership. And we need to ensure that affordable housing, especially low-income units, are not concentrated into single neighborhoods. To achieve these ends will be hard and lots of obstacles lie in the way. It will be important that the plan proactively examine the removal of barriers that stand in the way of achieving its housing gains. The plan should make these goals for affordable housing more explicit, with the need for clear metrics and benchmarks to implement affordable housing objectives. PATH is grateful to the work of the administration in developing this decadal vision of the future for Howard County, and we appreciate the opportunity to contribute our recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Koplik. Next, we have Danielle Winston, followed by Dan Hoydo.
Good evening. So I'm just going to speak for myself and from my heart. I'm actually representing myself as an individual and single women or single individuals. I moved here 6 years ago to Baltimore, and I quickly realized after 2 paychecks that I could not afford to live here. I work in housing, so I was housing individuals, and it was so discouraging and to feel like that I was not welcomed here. I realized as well I either had to get a second income or I had to get a second or a job, a business. So I quickly, after a month later, I invested in myself and started my business, and I have decided that I was no longer going to wait for Howard County to make this a workplace of choice for me. I was going to put my foot down and stand on my beliefs. I decided that I am going to be that change that I am, and I always live by the quote that says, "Be the change that you wish to see in the world." And I live and stand by that. And I always say this as well, and I stand by the HOCO of Design by Howard County for affordable housing and a cap. We need a cap of rent. The housing is unbearable. We cannot live here as single individuals. And I'd say this, the last thing, if nothing changes, nothing changes. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for testifying this evening. Dan Hoydo, followed by Laura Wisely, followed by Jansen Evelyn.
Hi, is this on? Yep. Okay. Yeah, I'm Dan Hoydo. I live in Oakland Mills, and I just have general comments on the general plan. There have been a lot of good specific recommendations I've heard to the plan, particularly regarding fee and lieu, and I like the idea of rent control. Mostly they have to do with mitigating inequity in housing and the problems that come from the cost of housing. And I'm sorry.
I'm going to be looking up later how to turn my ringtone into a cricket, so thank you.
So, but like another speaker, I'm concerned with the fundamental assumptions behind HOCO by design and some of the other comments that have been made here. And this would be a lot more articulate if I hadn't messed with it. So let me just say, we shouldn't focus on oversimplified appeals to supply and demand, especially when we're just talking about Howard County. Trickle-down housing was mentioned. It's not a real thing that works. One estimate on filtering in a major metro area was that to meet the supply of housing, it would take 50 years of increasing all kinds of housing, and then eventually it'll filter down. Also, housing market is complex. We can't reduce it to supply and demand. There are a number of factors that influence housing costs, and the biggest one is the price of land. Also, we should recognize that housing costs, the rise of housing costs has been a long-term trend since the 80s. And there has also been a long-term trend of what one analyst of Forbes called overbuilding. We've outstripped population growth with supply. And I suggest the reason for this has to do with concomitant trends in the fire industry, finance, investment in real estate, which I will not talk about.
Mr. Hoyto, you are always welcome to send us your written testimony. I would appreciate it. Thank you. Next, we have Laura Wisely, followed by Jansen Evelyn, followed by Laura Metal.
Do I need to do anything? Okay. All right. Thank you. My name is Laura Wisely. I live at 5811 Main Street in Elkridge. I'm here to discuss the Route 1 corridor plan, particularly the northern half of Route 1. I do think the plan gives accurate and detailed description of the composition and the character of Route 1. We are a metropolitan connector, the gateway to Patapsco State Park. It highlights our manufacturing and industrial sector and the pride and intent to preserve our historical community. The plan is also accurate in the assessment of Route 1 challenges: lack of retail businesses, blighted storefronts, lack of aesthetics, lack of walkability, lack of a high school, lack of historic preservation, police presence, sidewalks, transportation, and I could continue. The ironic thing is that thousands of dense housing was added to our corridor in the past 10 years and was supposed to help address these challenges, but they still exist at a profound scale. The assessment is spot on, and it should be. It has been written about over and over again in several renditions of studies and plans for the Route 1 corridor for almost the past 30 years, starting in 2001, 2002, 2006, 2009, 2019, and now 2023. I've definitely appreciated the tremendous efforts of DPZ connecting with citizens, but I think the Route 1 corridor is still baffling to them, and I respectfully feel we do not have the magic answer upon us. And now it is time for you, the council, to sign off on what the next 10 years will look like for the Route 1 corridor. Will it be another extensive study? The next 10 to 30 years needs to be focused on implementation. The county relies on the model that residential development pays for itself, and that the included additional community amenities will offset the toll that added density takes on resources. Where is it? I absolutely support supplying specialized housing for people with disabilities, elderly, empty nesters, but I'm afraid the housing will come first, and the services they need will come later, much later, or maybe never. Like what is happening right now, today, in 2023, in my neighborhood, in the Route 1 corridor. I asked the County Council and DPZ what legislation is needed to actually get something to transpire. Past recommendations around zoning changes. Each manual keeps suggesting to change the zoning. Call it something else yet again. It will not work. The word redevelopment seems to be the boogeyman. DPZ stated in the work sessions that redevelopment is expensive and challenging, especially in areas as old as the Elkridge area. Task forces, commissioners, I'm fearful who will lead this charge for this redevelopment authority. This county is strong, educated. A detailed plan does not need to be developer-driven. Can we have a contest? Can we motivate aspiring community planners, designers, architects, artists to design a redevelopment model based on suggested guidelines? And then we have them design, we have the planners plan, and then we have the builders build in that order versus the other way around. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Jansen Evelyn, followed by Laura Metal, followed by Melissa Rosenberg.
Good evening, Council Chair Rigby and members of the County Council. My name is Jansen Evelyn, and I live in Columbia in District 4. I'm a board member with the Howard Progressive Project and a member of the Housing Affordability Coalition. I am also on the executive board of the Howard County Conservancy, so I am very much about the preservation and expansion of green spaces, and on the executive board for the Howard County NAACP, where one of our game changers is economic prosperity, which is tied to home ownership. Further, professionally, I work extensively in this subject matter, land use policy, specifically implementation of a jurisdiction's general development plan. I've worked on the Columbia Association's vision and project in support of HOCO by Design. While I'm here speaking in my personal capacity, I bring those professional experiences and perspectives with me. Howard County desperately needs more housing that is affordable to all income levels. Our housing shortage, which is a direct result of our current land use policies and failure to keep pace with job growth, has created intense competition and price increases, both for the for sale and the rental housing markets. The consequences are severe, and you've heard everyone talk about it, so I won't list it explicitly. But during the pandemic, we often saluted and praised our pandemic heroes, the educators, the public safety, the healthcare, the service industry employees. We love to do the symbolic gestures and plant flags in our yards. Now the pandemic is behind us. Do not be gaslit by forgetting about our neighbors or by forgetting about the young professionals or our older residents. There's also a climate crisis. We must be cognizant of that, respecting the need for land preservation balanced with the need to confront this housing crisis head on. That's why HOCO by Design is the most critical general development plan in the county's history. Our housing shortage is endangering our community's economic health and quality of life. Therefore, I ask the County Council amend and approve the recommendations, including the changes to Chapter 6 in HOCO by Design, with the recommended housing allocations noted by both the Planning Board and the Coalition. Let me be perfectly clear. There is no easy way out. You cannot listen to those that say do not build any new houses or those who peddle fear, even if it's absurd like raccoons. There are those who say build an unlimited numbers of houses. Similarly, take that with a grain of salt. I am acutely aware of the decades of lax land use policies that promoted sprawl development, which may not pay for itself, but you know what does? Well-sited infill dense development. But we have to face reality. There is a crisis. The limited housing stock forces the price up to unrealistic numbers. The making of places is an ancient human practice that has always been key to our progress. As the world becomes more complex, we must not lose our capacity to make places where we can thrive in harmony with nature, places where we address historic inequities. I urge the County Council to take these steps and be bold. As the iconic rap group De La Soul said, the stakes are high.
Thank you. Laura Meadow, followed by Melissa Rosenberg, followed by Pam Beck.
Stakes is high.
Thank you, Dr. Jones, for the De La Soul correction.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, so.
All right, Ms.
Well,
Meadow.
good evening to all of you. Nice to see you ladies again. My name's Laura Meadow. I've lived on Daisy Road in Woodbine since 1985, in the middle of the Rural Conservation District, surrounded by farms that are in farmland preservation. And I like to pick up where Mr. Evelyn left off because it's like my thoughts follow on that. The question, I mean, the farmland, the agricultural preservation program is designed to give us farms in here, which are a major portion of the Howard County economy. It's agribusiness, it's agricultural industrial. And we want to preserve our beautiful open spaces and that industry, but we also have a huge pent-up demand for housing here in the county. And everybody who's explained it perfectly well, we understand the connection here. But we can't fill the shortfall that we have in the number of units that are missing now and they're going to be missing future, just with infill development in the little bit of land that's available in the planned service area. We have to think outside the box. We cannot follow the status quo, and we need to rethink zoning. Howard County is nearly totally built out only if we don't make the necessary changes to accommodate increasing population. So there's only a couple ways to build a sufficient number of homes that we're talking about, to increase the number of housing units in the county, to make housing affordable and available to people. That's the other sticking point that's not available. We can redevelop and re-subdivide existing land and neighborhoods or expand the planned service area, even if it means taking land out of agricultural preservation. Sometimes the people who put it in preservation die and the heirs don't want to farm. That happened up the road from me. It's now growing Pulte homes that cost over $1 million. HOCO by Design includes recommendations for incorporating more ADUs, accessory dwelling units, throughout the county. This strategy is being used successfully in other parts of the country, and it was legal in Howard County before 1971. Zoning could permit detached units that may be rented to non-family members. They could be rented to our teachers. They could be rented to our police officers. And an ADU is small. It's going to accommodate 1 or 2 people at most. Another recommendation in the report allowing duplexes and fourplexes to be constructed in lieu of single-family homes. This offers potential redevelopment, especially in older neighborhoods. This strategy is being successfully used in Minneapolis and has been used as part of a cluster development on Route 97 in western Howard County. Clustering smaller homes on smaller lots near a rural crossroads or in a rural village creates a walkable neighborhood while preserving larger parcels nearby. And shared septic systems can be built. If we can build a septic system to serve a high school that holds nearly 2,000 people, we can build shared septic systems to handle waste for small neighborhoods. Shared wells are also a possibility. The city of Bowie has obtained water from 5 underground wells for nearly 60 years. Incorporating gray water recapture systems for outdoor use also protects the aquifer. We need to do better here in the county. When I taught at a Columbia school, one of the schools that Ms. Young mentioned this morning, I had numerous colleagues who drove from Hagerstown and La Plata to work. My husband works in Gateway. He has colleagues who drive from the Eastern Shore and Pennsylvania. It's the cost of housing and the availability of housing. We have to do better.
Thank you very much, Ms. Meadow. Next, we have Melissa Rosenberg, followed by Pam Beck, followed by Cedric Brown.
Good evening, and a long evening on a long day, so thank you all. My name is Melissa Rosenberg. I'm the Executive Director of the Howard County Autism Society, and I'm here this evening with Matthew Plants, a disability self-advocate and board member of the Autism Society. I live in Silver Spring, and Matthew lives here in Columbia, Maryland. Together, we want to express our support for the policy recommendations put forward in HOCO by Design, the proposed update to the county's general plan. Matthew and I, along with many in the disability community, are strong supporters of the Autism Society's Patuxent Commons initiative, which was designed to provide affordable, inclusive housing and supportive community for people with disabilities. Thank you, council members, for your support of that initiative. But we're here this evening to call your attention to another group that could benefit from the affordable housing provisions of HOCO by Design, direct support professionals, and that was mentioned earlier by Katie Collins-Erkey from the ARC. The workers who provide the daily support that enables people with disabilities and many older adults to live in non-institutional, community-based settings. Before I continue with my remarks, Matthew, would you share with the council why direct support professionals and affordable housing are so important? You want to scoot in?
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
Because not only are we, because it's important because, like, both people with disabilities and direct support professionals run into the same problem. This county is basically unaffordable. I mean, me, for the disability part, for me, I would not be able to live in this county if it weren't for the help of friends, and it's just, there needs to be more affordable housing here in the county. And on the direct support side, we are having to, as Katie mentioned earlier, we are having to pull in from different counties, which is like, it would be more convenient for us to have our staff live in county. But we can't afford our staff to live in county. I mean, most of our people at the ARC who are working are not living in county, not because they probably don't want to, but they can't afford it. I mean, it's just so, and it's, I think the council needs to consider, and this is, I knew I wasn't supposed to speak on this, but I think the council just needs to take the recommendations of the planning board and maybe add more housing that's affordable for people with disabilities. I mean, sorry,
That's
Melissa,
okay. That's
again.
good. All right. Thank you, Matthew. And I can tell you firsthand of the chronic challenges our community and fellow disability organizations in Howard County face in finding reliable direct support staff. I hear from families all the time. Many who could provide support in the county simply won't because they can't afford to live here. By expanding the availability of affordable housing in the county, you have an opportunity to help alleviate the crisis. It will not solve it, but it will make a measurable difference. Other aspects of HOCO by Design include policies to advance transit-accessible affordable housing and the 10% requirement for affordable units to be designated for people with disabilities. These are also positive and supported by the Autism Society. As council members, you're responsible for balancing many complex priorities. Thank you for considering the very real impact your decision-making on HOCO by Design will have on the lives of people with autism and other disabilities. And thank you so much.
Thank you both. Next, we have Pam Beck, who I believe is with us virtually.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
Pam, you've been elevated. You can go ahead and unmute your mic and turn on your camera if you wish.
Mute, and here's the, there we go.
Great. We can see and hear you.
Okay, great. Good evening, council members. My name is Pam Beck. I am a 45-year resident of Howard County and a mother of a 38-year-old young man, Brandon, with autism. I'm also a longtime volunteer and former board member of the Howard County Autism Society and strong supporter of Patuxent Commons, which, as you know, is affordable, accessible development that will provide individuals with disabilities both housing and supportive community. I'm here this evening to express support for the update of the general plan put forward by the HOCO by Design plan. The affordable housing provision in the plan are very necessary and important to people with disabilities. I hope you will support them. But there is an additional component of the plan that is also very important to those of us in the disability community. Transportation and walkability amenities are critical to people with disabilities for whom mobility is very frequently an ongoing challenge. On average, people with disabilities drive far less than people without disabilities and are much more reliant on public transportation. Walkability and transit access can change the lives of people with autism and other disabilities who live in Howard County. Being close enough to walk to jobs or access a bus that could take them to the Howard County Community College could literally transform their lives. This is why the provisions of the HOCO by Design that will help advance transit support development and activity centers are so important. Locating diverse housing options and job opportunities along one another in compact, walkable, mixed-use environments creates exactly the kind of communities in which people with disabilities can thrive. This kind of place-making can bring people together, inviting open spaces, transit connections, housing, pedestrian and bike facilities, and other amenities that will attract residents, employers, and vibrant economic and social activity. Council members, inclusion has rightfully become elevated as an important issue in Howard County. I'm very pleased that this is written into the core of this plan as well. But here is the key truth. You cannot be included in a community you cannot physically access. Transit opportunities, activity centers, and dynamic neighborhoods of this type forwarded in the HOCO by Design are designed to create access and facilitate inclusion for all people. Thank you so much for your time and consideration.
Thank you very much, Ms. Beck. Next, we have Cedric Brown. Well, I really enjoyed Cedric's email, so I was very much hoping that they were here. Next, we have Connor Gephardt. Another good email. Oh, you are here. Great. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, members of the council. My name is Connor Gephardt, and I am a resident of Ellicott City in District 1. I'm speaking tonight in favor of HOCO by Design, and I will highlight some areas that I think are particularly important to focus on, especially as we move through this process. Specifically, I will focus on chapters 4 and 6. On the whole, I am very impressed by, the thought and care put into the plan, and I hope to see many of the ideas presented implemented over the coming years. First, with chapter 4, I believe we are in dire need of a high-functioning and efficient public transport network. Quoting the plan, many community members continue to express their desires to replace their work, shopping, or other automobile trips with more economic and environmentally conscious choices. I know I am personally frustrated with the lack of alternative transportation options where I live. I am 5 minutes away from Old Ellicott City by car. However, there are no sidewalks or bike lanes, and if I wanted to try and take a bus, I'd have to wait on the side of the road with no protection from cars for however, buses only run once an hour. And it's very frustrating, especially if I were to try to go further than the 5 minutes down the road to Columbia or Laurel or anywhere else around the county. I would love to be able to explore. Obviously, these are specific examples, and I don't expect the HOCO by Design to address these in particular. But I do want to focus on how it states automobile travel will continue to dominate travel patterns for the near future. I think this is something that we can and should change via policies that encourage investment in providing a usable public transport network. I would love to be able to experience more of the county without having to drive, especially just to go park my car in a parking lot that could be used for anything else that's not just a lot. I'm excited by the infrastructure investments listed on table 4-1. And I hope we all get to take a look at our current infrastructure and find ways to build a more easily accessed, traveled, and enjoyed community for everybody. On Chapter 6, I'm a young person thinking about buying a house. I will provide some personal information to highlight some problems that are discussed, and as lots of people have said tonight. When I was 10 years old, my uncle passed away from cancer. I was included in his will, and he left me enough money to pay for school and use whatever I had left to get my adult life started. I'm in the fortunate and privileged position of having enough money to maybe afford a down payment on a house in the county. However, I don't think that I should be able to afford that just because of a death in my family. And my partner is a teacher in Howard County Public Schools. If we were not together, I don't think she would be able to live here on her own. And I think that the HOCO by Design makes a good attempt at making housing accessible for everyone with diversifying the types of housing, meeting that missing middle. But I think we should also develop and implement additional policies to create a county where people can afford to live and work. In addition to everything outlined by HOCO by Design, policies like rent control expansion, publicly subsidized housing efforts, like the Housing Opportunities Trust Fund, can help increase affordability across the county. Overall, I'm very excited by HOCO by Design. I think it contains a lot of good ideas. I believe we must become a leader in the state for cultivating our community through bold programs that create real change for our current and future residents. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gephardt. Next, we have Karina Fisher, followed by Kevin Burke, followed by Alan Schneider, followed by Joel Hurwitz.
Hello. Thank you for the pause on the start. It's been a long day. Last day of school, a lot of celebration to get in before getting here. I just want to start off by saying tonight that it is a relief to see that for the first time in Howard County history, schools are a part of these general plan discussions. There's a timeline that's in the document that reflects these discussions starting in 1960 with no mention of schools. Not in 1960, not in 1971, not in 1982, not in 1990, not in 2000, and not in 2012. And they're finally mentioned now, and that's because the community outrage has reached such a point that all the parents are aware of how badly our school system has become overcrowded without any mitigation over decades. But tonight is not about the schools. We'll save the rest for another night. For tonight, I wanted to focus a little bit on Chapter 6, Dynamic Neighborhoods, specifically ADUs, which is accessory dwelling units. On page 134, it describes how Howard County residents already have the capability to add attached ADUs if located within a single-family detached dwelling. This includes a renovated basement, attic, or garage to address the needs of in-law suites and granny flats for aging parents and family members, or space for our children to come back to should they need. Page 134 also says in one teeny tiny sentence that some residents have expressed concerns with the impact on the already overburdened infrastructure that detached ADUs would have, and then adds a tiny sentence as if to assuage those concerns. However, regulatory tools can be adopted to minimize these potential impacts. This little sentence does nothing to assuage our concerns. What are these regulatory tools that are being referred to? Could it be Apfo or any of the other regulatory tools which have allowed our school systems to become so overcrowded that we are warehousing thousands of children in over 250 trailers every single day? Please, I would love to hear about these regulatory tools, but what I'm reading in these hundreds of pages is suggestions about further weakening them with exemptions, fees and liens, everything. So I'm wondering where the language is. Are we introducing new regulatory rules? Because the ones we have certainly aren't working. And I would hate that we're going to further weaken the ones that we already have with exemptions and fees and lieu. I think we can all agree how well they have not worked. What is also concerning to our mature and established neighborhoods is the constant attempts to carve up our neighborhoods with zoning changes in order to squeeze infill. I could go on, but there are attempts at the state to silence our communities. There are publications with local land use attorneys telling us to bypass our communities. There is big movements to keep silencing our community because we are finally having a voice in these documents. It is, my time is up. I think I've said enough, and I look forward to further discussion on our schools that are here for the first time. Thank you.
Sure, Ms. Fisher, Ms. Young has something, and I do as well.
Just a quick question, Karina. What page was that regulatory tools phrase on? If we're going to amend it, I need to be able to get back to it quickly.
Yeah, the one that I'm talking about that is talking about the regulatory tools as if it's to address the concerns. It just says, however, well, let me read the sentence to you. So this is page 134.
Thank you.
Throughout the HOCO by Design planning process, some residents have expressed concerns about the impact that ADUs would have on parking, the environment, and neighborhood character. However, regulatory tools can be adopted to minimize these potential impacts.
And was that chapter 4 or 6?
This is 6.
6, okay.
So I'm wondering, what are these supposed regulatory tools? Are they something new? Or are we talking about things like Apfo that already exist, but within the language further in this plan, it's all about weakening Apfo. So I'm wondering, what are these regulatory tools and where are they discussed? That would be really helpful if the community is to look at our overburdened schools, our traffic, our stormwater issues, all of these things that are supposed to be the foundation of our community, new and ones to come in. Future residents deserve that. Future children in our school system deserve it just as much as we do as residents. So where are these tools? What are we talking about here? I would love to hear that in future discussions, especially in 5 and 6, which I don't think have been in work session yet.
No, not yet. When I hear regulatory tools, when I'm thinking about ADUs, I fundamentally believe they should be by right, that we should give homeowners freedom and choice. And I also believe that they will not be on a fit for every lot, on every place in every community. For example, I'm on a corner house. My backyard is my neighbor's side yard. I could see that being prohibited. I'm also on a quarter acre, so I could also see smaller lots not being allowed to have ADUs. And then lastly, the regulatory tools that most often function are setbacks. And those are found in your actual zoning subdivision regulations. So if you, and I don't know if you can see this because I'm realizing my pen colors. Okay. Well, what I have here is I have a very rudimentary drawing of a house and a driveway. But then these are the setbacks that squish this building envelope. So however far you squish this, then you're squishing where that unit can go. And so then you're further reducing which lots they can be on. And so that's the discussion where, well, where do ADUs make a good fit? How big should the lot be? Should there be parking minimums? All of those questions that go into those subdivision regulations and those bulk regulations through code rewrites. And when you actually look in, if you go to R20 and you look in the details within R20, you'll see all that information about how you would build a house in R20. And we would have to go through that same process to do that for ADUs. So when I hear regulatory tools, that's what I hear.
I understand what you're saying from the perspective of regulatory tools for zoning and land use.
Yeah.
I'm talking about regulatory tools that mitigate burdens on our infrastructure. And I'm also concerned with, like I said, what came out of the General Assembly is this task force.
The work group to discuss how to implement ADUs?
Mm-hmm. So the bill HB 239 and SB 382, Accelerated Dwelling Unit Policy, came out of the General Assembly. This was discussed last night as a state delegate. said basically that these concerned about this policy task force is concerning, because where this was basically born out of was strong developer lobbying within the state.
And the
Not only
AARP
that,
the AARP is a huge.
well, that's great,
proponent.
but I'm telling you what a state delegate said, okay?
Sorry, I don't mean to. I just
That's
I
okay.
personally testified on that.
That's
bill.
okay, but I'm telling you what a state delegate said.
Sure.
And I'm also saying things like on the Maryland Matters, where we have land use attorneys literally advocating to bypass community voice and take local control out of land use decisions. Why? Because they see the community as an obstacle. If you listen to recordings from the steering committee, actually there's a gentleman here that literally proposed the same thing. That democracy is an obstacle to this process. So on our steering committee, in the state, in developer publications, there is an active effort to take out local input of community members for land use decisions. That's a problem. And I don't believe that anybody that can stand here and say that we have a democracy and a democratic process wouldn't find a problem with that. It's on recording. It's not something made up.
And
It's
again,
in print.
we're here to talk tonight about the general plan, and I'm
This
so
is
glad
the
that
general
you were
plan.
able to participate
Me too.
in this process.
I am too, that I still have a voice in this democratic process. I hope it stays that way, and I hope anybody that's elected to represent us stops any efforts on taking away local voice in local land use decisions or any decisions.
Yes, I would imagine that local leaders.
I hope so.
All right, next we have Kevin Burke. Hi. Hello. And again, Ms. Fisher, if you want to follow up, I was really just seeking to address your question about what tools. So, Mr. Burke?
Good evening. I'm Kevin Burke. I live at 9074 Washington Street in Savage in District 3. I'm here speaking as an individual. I've also voiced my concerns as a board member of the Savage Community Association, but just as an individual. At Savage Fest on June 3rd, we had several petitions available for community members to weigh in on HOCO by design issues that would specifically affect Savage and adjacent communities. 3 pages of people who signed up to these petitions on each matter. I prefer the HOCO by design general plan update requires concurrent adequate public facilities such as schools, roads, public safety, and environmental resources as a condition of adding residential density rather than incentivizing development with adequacy exemptions. That's one petition. Second petition, I prefer not to enable missing middle concepts that allow 2 to 6 multifamily units by right on single-family residential lots across the county in the HOCO by design general plan update. Third petition, I prefer not to enable accessory dwelling unit concepts in the HOCO by design general plan update that allow by right multifamily units within house additions, basements, attics, and additional structures across the county. So that's from individuals within my community who were at a county fair and stopped to listen to some input and provide their opinions on some select matters in HOCO by design. Personally, I think that HOCO by design should include a plan for building additional school capacity to keep up with new residential units and to eliminate existing shortage of classroom space, evidenced by over 250 portable classroom units. The future land use map should also include the location of future school sites, because we know we're going to need them. As if we're going to grow as a county, plan for it. Regarding implementation, I believe Chapter 6, page 51, implementing actions, would really request specific suggestions of exemptions to APFO school weights without minimums of what is required to get the APFO school weight exemption. That's a problem. You need to please clarify, specify for fairness what would allow an exemption, what would qualify that. For the 5th chapter, supporting economic prosperity, recommends amending the adequate public facilities ordinance. I'm concerned that amending APFO may not result in positive changes to the quality of life for current and new residents. If affordable housing is going to be done, is it really affordable if we're compromising on the quality of life, access to amenities, and adequate public facilities ordinances? I don't think it is. We shouldn't compromise on that. We should plan to incorporate the same access of existing residents. If we're going to have affordable housing, 25%, as expressed by some other individuals tonight, is an admirable goal. You could go higher. Define what affordable housing is and make sure that they have access to the same quality of life that they deserve. These are people who serve us all, as we've heard from other members who testified tonight. Do you have any questions for me?
Just appreciation, Mr. Burke. Thanks for coming out and representing Savage.
Great.
A gem of missing middle housing. Thank you. Next, we have Alan Schneider, followed by Joel Hurwitz.
Good evening. My name is Alan Schneider. I live in Clarksville, Maryland, on State Route 108. I have some thoughts and some additions, and I would be glad to help with helping with proposing with writing some of those amendments. One of the things that I noticed, one omission, is that the state legislature has mandated the Climate Change Act of 2022, more than a year ago. And so I think what I would recommend adding to the general plan is that we embrace, Howard County embrace climate change solutions, number one. And second addition, no one really knows what's going to happen in the next 10 years or even in the next 2 years. So what I recommend adding is that we have a review every 2 years and with measurable standards. So you'd add measurable standards to the goals we have for the next 10 years, review those as to whether or not they were been achieved every 2 years, and move forward. Next plan, next idea. The current general plan has been described as a guide in many, many hearings. It's not a guide. It's really something that the people depend on when they move here. They look at it and they say, this is what we're promised. They need to have something more than a plan. We've also been told by the Department of Planning and Zoning that we have very limited land use. We need to be able to preserve the limited land that we have left, which means that we add, number one, compliance and enforcement. We need to make sure that every proposed plan for using our limited land meets the criteria. In other words, are the criteria, are the goals in the general plan met or are they not? Don't pick them out selectively, but look at each one of them. There's an example of that in Maryland. I can show that to you and I can deliver that to you, so that as we move forward, each development has to analyze whether or how the individual goals are being met. It's kind of a guide as to whether or not we're moving forward in the plan that we have for the general goal. Third, environmental sustainability. I think I'll skip over that because I'm running out of time. What we have is criteria that are being ignored. There's a high development, high density development, and the criteria was that there be an environmental assessment. Riverkeeper Tutman testified on that. There had never been an environmental assessment, and that's going to damage the river and our watersheds. The other two things I want to talk about is affordable housing. If I could take a quick one. On affordable housing, something that nobody has talked about is that to preserve the limited land that we have, we can actually require smaller units be built so that housing is more affordable, because home ownership is much better than renting. You have a 30-year mortgage, the price of your house stays the same instead of 17% increases. You also can add ADA compliance to the requirements for building, because it's a lot easier to do it right away, as well as with solar, to avoid 15% a year annual electricity increases. And the last point is just, we really need to have independent traffic studies. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Last, we have Joel Hurwitz, who is with us virtually.
Joel, you've been elevated. Feel free to unmute yourself and turn on your camera if you wish.
All right, I thought some people would sign up at 7 in the room. Good evening, council members. What's the other person from the 9 o'clock group? Joel Hurwitz from Columbia. I previously sent an email to you after your March 29th work session to include some of these thoughts. As I've been arguing with DPZ throughout the process, I find it a misnomer and somewhat dishonest to include the redeveloped Wild Lake Village Center as an area transform. Just because it's a village center, it shouldn't be in the future land use map, because I don't believe that, like the other 8 village centers, will be redeveloped because it already was. Councilmember Young has agreed to this point. As we keep hearing this evening, very little land is left. There have been comments about combining parcels, yet little attention is made to the largest parcels that remain in the county, the Manheim Auto Exchange, University of Maryland Farm, and the Savage Quarry. Because they believe that quarry operations will continue, DPZ has declined to include the Savage Stone Quarry as an area transform. The suggestion of a bridge over I-95 connecting Gateway to the quarry essentially makes the quarry area an appendix to Gateway. Thus, it should be included in any study plans for Gateway. Moreover, access to the Guilford Park school site would address school concerns for a Gateway that have been expressed by Councilmember Young. When it comes to redevelopment, parking lots, little attention is paid to the largest. Now, the plan gives just one passing sentence to the mile-long Manheim Auto Exchange, which could be made into more intensive industrial uses, says in the plan. No attention is given to preserving the more than 900-acre University of Maryland experimental farm under AgPres. In the 1990s, the university proposed selling the property. That many industrial use warehouse buildings are being used for recreational commercial community uses is not discussed. Rather than have businesses that manufacture widgets to sell to the world, we have uses that cater to local businesses. In the Red Branch Road area, view of the map shows that they include dance, ballet, jazzercise, gymnastics, Pilates, laser, and dog obedience. Many warehouse spaces are used by religious institutions. In the areas along Snowden, there's stores, bars, and hyperkids. The Wegmans property was a former warehouse property. No attention is paid to the mobile home communities that, when they are redeveloped, that these lower priced housing are accommodated in new apartments. Person after person has complained about affordable housing, but we failed to use every tool possible. For years, I've asked why we don't have even one Affordable Housing Land Trust Act project, and apparently there's no mention of it again. And the motion chapter only has about 3 pages on the future. There's no mention about electronic vertical takeoff and landing, eVTOL air taxis. Transportation staff says bond the planning horizon of the plan. I disagree, and even if it was not true, we need to take the availability of it for the transit center, as Councilman Young has been discussing the last couple of weeks. Articles are now talking about how FAA is taking comments for rules for licensing. The military has a contract. Testing is occurring in New York City. 2 more sentences. Delta Airlines intends to fly from airports to neighboring destinations, and commercial operations might begin in 2025. And many eVTOL businesses, including Maryland's FlyHop, do not seem to be planning to take 2 decades to go to commercial, only in the 2040s, as the Transportation Office implies. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hurwitz. This concludes our first general plan public hearing. I do want to make an announcement for the folks in the room that someone has lost their keys. So if you could please take a look around your seat just to see if you locate them. And if you do, let us know. And they've asked that they be turned into the guard's desk. So please continue to monitor the council's website for more information on the general plan process. We are now adjourned. Thank you.
It's the longest one.